Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the blood-soaked sand of the ancient world, where you're not just waking up for another long day, you're waking up to maybe your last. You're a gladiator now, which means your job is pretty simple. Fight, survive, entertain, and possibly die. All before lunch. And let's be real, you probably won't survive this. The odds are stacked, and Rome isn't exactly handing out workers' comp. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me your city and what time it is where you're watching, because I need to know who's joining me on these ridiculous historical deep dives at 2 AM. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun hasn't even crested over the skyline of Rome yet, but the streets are already alive. You're jostled awake by shouting, Latin curses tossed back and forth, and a sharp kick to your ribs. There's no pillow, no mattress, just straw that smells like it had dreams once. You blink, confused, sore, and instantly thirsty. But the memory comes crashing back fast. You were sold, not metaphorically. You were actually bought at auction like a piece of livestock. Now, welcome to your new job. The scent of sweat, blood, and something sour lingers in the air. The cell you're in is more like a kennel than a room. Iron bars on one side, stone walls, and 10 other men cramped in with you. Some are sleeping, some are already up doing drills or silent prayers to gods who've long stopped listening. No one makes eye contact. The new ones never last, and right now, you're the new one. You still remember how it all happened. Being hauled into a public square, stripped for inspection, and then prodded and paraded, and a man with a neck as wide as your thigh gave you a once-over, grunted approval, and slapped a price tag on your soul. The bidding lasted all of 5 minutes. Now you belong to a ludus, a gladiator school. Sounds educational, right? Think again. You're not going to learn math or literature, you're going to learn how to kill, or at least how to do it convincingly enough that the crowd roars before you bleed out. Your new name? Doesn't matter. Your identity's been erased. You're just another damnatus ad ludum now. Condemned to the games. That term alone tells you everything you need to know. You're not seen as a person, you're seen as a prop. A moving, bleeding stage. Your first full day in the ludus is a dizzying blur of shouts, lashes, drills, and exhaustion so deep it hums under your skin. They strip you again, this time to tattoo you. A crude ink symbol on your forehead marks you as a gladiator slave. It'll never come off. Think of it like a lifetime pass to hell. Then comes the branding, hot iron to flesh. The smell is the worst part. Burnt meat, your meat. And the guards, they're not just watching, they're amused. To them this is a warm-up. You'll see much worse. Some of them are ex-gladiators themselves, and they don't like seeing weakness. Weakness gets everyone killed. So they work it out of you with fists, boots, and wooden training swords that still crack bones. A couple of the other new recruits break that first week. Not emotionally, physically. One kid from Gaul screams for hours after a guard dislocates his shoulder by accident. They don't reset it. They just drag him away, and you never see him again. Now here's your first fun gladiator trivia fact. Not all gladiators were slaves. Yeah, some were volunteers. You heard that right. Actual Roman citizens, sometimes even nobles, chose to become gladiators. Why? For fame, money, or just the rush? The auctorati, they were called. They signed contracts willingly. But you didn't get a choice. You're part of the majority who got dragged in screaming or starving. What's weird, and kinda messed up, is how society views you now. You're a bottom feeder and a celebrity at the same time. People will shout your name in the streets. Kids will pretend to be you with sticks in the alleyways. You might even get your face on pottery, but you still can't vote. You still can't leave. You're glorified trash with fans. And here's where it gets even darker. Scholars still argue about how deadly the job actually was. Some believe most fights didn't end in death because training a gladiator was expensive, and killing them off constantly would be bad for business. Others say those mercy rumours were overblown, and that crowd bloodlust demanded regular fatalities, especially during major games. The truth probably lives somewhere in between. Sure, you might survive a fight or two, but long term, everyone ends up bleeding out in the dust eventually. Today, as the sun finally rises, you're herded out into the practice yard. It's a walled-off open area surrounded by wooden scaffolding, torches, and sand that's already stained pink in spots. Here's where you'll learn how to move, how to fall, how to kill. There's an older guy yelling instructions. He's the Doctore, the combat trainer. His arms are like stone pillars, and his face is a permanent sneer. He's a former champion, which means he's both famous and dangerously dead inside. He barks orders in a voice that could split granite, and you move. No one dares ask questions. You learn fast or you fall faster. Even the wooden practice swords have weight, and after an hour your hands feel like they have been chewed on. Your legs are jelly, your vision spots, and then the next drill begins. By nightfall you're too tired to cry, or maybe your body's too dehydrated to bother. You collapse back onto the straw pile, where the air is thick with snoring, moaning, and the occasional whispered prayer to Mars or Mithras. The pain in your muscles is constant, but there's also something else. A strange spark flickering inside you. Not hope, not yet, but something like survival instinct. A raw, primal drive. Because tomorrow, you get your weapon. Dawn again, your second day in the ludus, and already you wake like a soldier. Eyes snapping open before the sun finishes climbing, joints aching, brain trying to prepare you for whatever nightmare drill they've cooked up today. But instead of the usual screaming and prodding, today starts differently. You're lined up in the yard, squinting into the sunrise, and one by one, the Doctore walks down the line, flanked by 2 guards. His shadow crosses your face and you instinctively brace, expecting a blow. Instead, he nods, then grunts, then points at a rack of weapons gleaming like a warning. Today, you're being assigned your class, your gladiator persona. Basically, your personal death costume. The Romans didn't just throw people into the arena to fight randomly. Oh no, it was theatre. Every gladiator type had a specific role, a look and a strategy. You weren't just fighting a guy, you were playing a character, with gear and rules and history trailing behind each blade. The choices? Limited. And not yours to make. The lanistae, your owner, decides based on your body. Height, strength, speed, build, and maybe his mood that day. Are you tall and broad-shouldered? You're probably about to become a secutor, a heavily armoured brute with a simple sword and a face-covering helmet that feels like it's trying to suffocate you. Are you lean and fast? Congrats, you're a retiarius, the weird one who fights with a net and trident and practically no armour. Hope you like being mocked by the crowd because they find net fighters hilarious until you start skewering people. You're marched forward. The doctor eyes your arms, grabs your chin roughly, studies your jaw like he's sizing up a horse. Then he steps back and mutters, "Thraex." Just like that, it's done. You're going to be a Thraex, a Thracian-style fighter. You get a small curved sword called a seeker, a rectangular shield, and a helmet with a visor shaped like a bird's beak. It's theatrical. Everything in Rome is theatrical. As you're fitted into your training gear, the weight becomes obvious. Your helmet alone feels like wearing a full wine barrel on your head. You can barely see. Breathing is shallow. Your shield digs into your side, and the sword, well, it's wood for now, but it's still sharp enough to break ribs with the right swing. The armourer snorts as you wobble under the weight. "You'll either get stronger or die trying," he says, and then moves on. Your first steps in full gear are awkward. You shuffle, you trip. Your helmet clanks against your breastplate when you turn too fast. But you're not alone. Every new recruit looks like a newborn deer in bronze sandals. Across from you, a man from Numidia struggles to keep his shield balanced while a guy next to him vomits from heat and nerves. And here's the thing, none of this is optional. You're training for survival, sure, but more than that, you're training for performance. The crowd doesn't want efficiency, they want drama. A clean, swift kill is boring. What they crave is tension, struggle, reversal. You getting wounded, then coming back swinging. Or you nearly winning, then getting your throat slit. Either way, they want to feel something. And it's your job to give them that feeling, whether you're alive at the end or not. Historically, Rome had over a dozen different gladiator types, each designed to contrast visually and strategically with its common opponents. Your type, the Thraex, often fought against murmillos, big guys with fish-shaped helmets. The idea was to clash styles, your agility versus their bulk, a kind of deadly chess match, but with swords and blood and screaming. So training begins again, but this time with your gear. The doctor shouts moves in rapid Latin, slashes, blocks, rolls. You mimic him, slowly at first, then with more fluidity. There's a rhythm to it, almost like dancing. Horrible, sweaty, joint-destroying dancing. You partner up with another trainee, and you spar under the brutal eye of the guards, who whack you with rods every time you drop your guard. One kid loses a tooth from a wooden sword. Another gets his fingers broken and still has to keep going. No one gets time off. That afternoon you learn something surprising. There's structure here. Order. Even a weird kind of respect. The longer-lasting gladiators, the veterans, they are not just bullies. They teach. Some even help you adjust your grip or stance. Not out of kindness, but because you're a team. Gladiators train together, live together, sometimes even died together. And the better your group is, the better chance you all have when thrown into battle. Some of them, like a heavily scarred Gaul named Crixus, are almost like demigods. You hear rumours that he's undefeated. The guy walks like a storm cloud with legs. Here's a fringe fact for you. Archaeologists once found a cemetery of actual gladiators in Ephesus, and many of the bones had clean, precise injuries, suggesting their deaths were orchestrated, even respectful. Some skulls had square punctures, probably made post-mortem by a ceremonial hammer to ensure death. In Rome, even how you died had to follow the script. Still, as the sun lowers and training winds down, one debate keeps surfacing in your mind. Were gladiators really all miserable slaves? Or did some of them find meaning in this life? Discipline, brotherhood, purpose? Historians can't agree. Some say gladiators were the most exploited victims of Roman cruelty. Others argue that some fighters carved out a kind of pride in the role, even enjoying the fame and respect from fans. The truth is, it's complicated. Like most brutal systems, it leaves just enough room for myth and memory to twist the reality into something survivable. You stagger back to your cell as night falls. Every muscle hurts. Your ears are ringing from hours of shouted commands and clanging metal. But something's shifted. You know your role now. You know your weapon. You even know your enemy, at least on paper. It's not just about fear anymore. It's about preparation. The man across from you, the one with the bandaged shoulder, catches your eye and nods. Just once. No words, just the quiet understanding that both of you are still breathing, still here, and that tomorrow, the game begins again. You wake up before the shouts even start, your body already anticipating pain. Every muscle aches with a kind of deep humming soreness, like your bones are learning to scream. And yet strangely you're awake, alert, maybe even ready? That's the terrifying part. You're starting to adapt, the bruises, the stiffness, the fear. It's settling into something like routine, and routine means you've survived the worst part, the beginning. The yard greets you with that same dusty warmth and the tang of blood soaked into old sand. It's training day again, but today is not just about swinging your weapon like a lunatic, it's about precision. Today they teach you how to fight like a Roman, which doesn't mean being fast or flashy. It means being efficient, staying alive longer, and selling every movement like it's for a packed theatre, which eventually it will be. The doctor is already waiting, his arms crossed like twin battering rams, watching as trainees shuffle into the ring. A few guys limping, one with a black eye from a sparring accident. Or maybe not an accident. Doesn't matter. You take your place, grip your wooden sicker tight and start the drills. Every swing is corrected. Every foot wrong gets punished with a crack to the shin or a barked insult that sounds like it was invented specifically to make grown men cry. But with each repetition something clicks. The weight of the sword, the balance of the shield, the movement of your feet across the sand. You start moving as one machine. A violent, exhausted, sand-covered machine. Around you others are finding their rhythm too. Some faster than others. One guy, an ex-soldier from Britannia, moves like he was born with a blade in hand, but you notice something. He's not showing off. He's conserving energy, calculating. The doctor notices it too. That's the thing about gladiator training. It's not just physical, it's psychological. The instructors are watching how you react under pressure, how you adapt, guilt. Whether you panic, freeze or adjust. Because one day the opponent won't be wooden. He'll be just as scared, just as trained, and just as desperate not to die. But today's lesson isn't all swordplay. There's something else. Formations. You're paired off and taught how to maneuver with another fighter. Back to back, guarding one another's flanks. You're learning to survive not just solo but as a unit. And that's when it hits you. Some fights aren't one-on-one. Sometimes you're thrown into the arena with a dozen others, all performing a scripted battle scene meant to entertain the masses. You could be cast as a Greek soldier, a barbarian raider, or even a mythological monster. The crowd doesn't care about historical accuracy. They care about spectacle. They want to feel like they've stepped into a bloody version of a bedtime story. Halfway through the day you get your first break, not to relax, Rome doesn't believe in comfort, but to eat. A bowl of barley mash, some beans and a chunk of dry bread, washed down with sour wine cut with vinegar, because clean water is for philosophers and emperors. It tastes like sadness, but fuels like magic. Gladiators had shockingly specific diets, high in carbs, low in meat, packed with calcium. In fact, recent bone studies show they consumed weird amounts of plant ash, basically ancient protein powder. Why? To strengthen bones, supposedly. Doesn't help with flavour, though. Back in the yard, you're introduced to the pugil, the practice dummy. It's basically a torso on a post stuffed with straw and hatred. Your job is to treat it like it insulted your mother. Strike high, strike low, feint, pivot, shield bash, repeat, over and over, until the motions blur and your body moves faster than your brain. The sun climbs, the sweat pours, and the air thickens with the stink of a dozen desperate bodies trying to become weapons. Eventually, you're chosen for a sparring match, not with your regular partner. This time you're up against a guy twice your size, armoured like a walking bronze oven. A Secutor. Classic matchup. He lumbers into the ring like a war elephant, slow but terrifying. You, with your curved sword and lighter gear, are meant to dance around him. At least that's the idea. The doctor signals. You circle each other. The sand crunches underfoot. The only sounds are your breath and the distant clanking from other training matches. Then he lunges. It's a fake-out, but your body still flinches. He presses the advantage, crashing into you with his shield. You stumble, nearly fall. The doctor screams for you to counter. You slash sideways, catching the edge of his armour with a thwack. He grunts, surprised. You pivot, duck, strike again. He clips your thigh with a wild swing and you bite down on the pain, eyes narrowing. The match ends in a draw. No applause, no fanfare, just a curt nod from the trainer. You survive. Barely. But the fight shakes something loose in you. You weren't perfect, you weren't even good, but you stayed standing. And here, that's the definition of progress. Later, while bandaging your leg with a strip of someone else's torn tunic, you overhear two guards talking about an upcoming munus, a public fight scheduled a few weeks from now. The Emperor's cousin is hosting it, apparently. A big deal. Which means a handful of trainees, maybe even you, will be thrown in for their debut. They won't tell you when until the day before. Keeps you on edge, keeps you sharp. Here's something strange. Ancient Romans didn't see gladiators just as entertainers. Some of them genuinely saw you as holy. That's right, certain cults believed gladiator blood had sacred power. Women would sneak into the arena afterward to collect it in vials, smearing it on their faces as beauty rituals or fertility charms. Others would pay to drink it, believing it could cure epilepsy or give them strength. Creepy? Absolutely. But in Rome, the line between religion and gore was almost non-existent. As night falls, you're back in the cell, cleaning your sword with a rag that smells like mould and defeat. One of the older fighters, an Egyptian with one eye and a voice like gravel, sits nearby polishing his helmet. "You did all right today," he mutters, not looking at you. "That's high praise here." You close your eyes, letting exhaustion pull you under. The pain in your leg throbs in rhythm with your heartbeat. And somewhere out there, past the walls and the guards and the city's endless noise, a lion roars from its cage. "You'll see it soon enough." You wake up before the guards this time, lying there in the grainy quiet, your fingers absently tracing the calluses blooming across your palms. It's been maybe a week, though time slips weird in the ludus, and your body is already transforming into something harder, leaner, stranger. The bruises are still there, of course, painting your skin like some primitive fresco, but you're no longer tripping over your own sword. And today, the doctor says you'll be tested. Not on whether you can win a fight. That comes later. No, today's test is about control. They line you up in the sand, a dozen sweating bodies squinting into the morning sun, and then they bring out the weapons rack. Not the practice stuff. Real steel. Short swords gleaming, spears with blood-stained shafts, curved daggers, and nets with barbed weights. It's like walking into a deadly costume department. Each weapon means something. A story, a style, a fate. This is where the lanistae starts refining who you'll be in the arena. Your initial class, Thraex, Secutor, Retiarius, that's just the broad stroke. Now they assign your specific armatura, your combat kit. Some of it's based on your performance in training, some of it's just what's available. Most of it is pure theatre. You're handed a real sicker this time, the curved, single-edged sword of the Thracian fighters. It's sharp, surprisingly light, and shaped specifically to hook around shields or armour. Along with it, you're given your first real shield, a parmula, small but strong, curved to catch incoming blows. And your helmet, your helmet. It's absurd. The visor's shaped like a griffin's beak, and it covers your entire face. Visibility? Maybe 10%. Airflow? None. You wear your own breath like a hot, wet blanket. The whole thing smells like old sweat and metal and fear. But in Rome, visuals matter. Each class of gladiator was designed to look a certain way. The Thraex, your type, was intentionally styled after Rome's old enemies, the Thracians. Why? Because Romans loved symbolic revenge. They built a whole sport around conquering the same people over and over again, even if it was just poor fools in bird helmets pretending to be them. To the audience, your armour tells a story. You're the barbarian, the wild man, the enemy. They want you to lose, but only after putting on a good show. The training changes once you're armoured. Everything becomes slower, more deliberate. You're no longer flailing around with a wooden stick. Now, every move carries weight, literally. Your body groans under the gear, your breath comes harder, and your hands develop blisters on top of blisters. You train in pairs, simulating real matches. The doctor shouts matchups, Thraex vs Murmillo, Retiarius vs Acuta. Always the classics. You're pitted again and again against the same guy, a Murmillo with a heavy rectangular shield and a straight gladius. The doctor watches closely, barking corrections. Aim low, he shouts. Use your curve. Hook the damn shield. And you do. You learn to use your gear the way it's meant to be used. Every class has its rhythm, its dance. Yours is fast, choppy, strategic. You're the mosquito dodging the boot, striking in flashes and pulling back before the counter. Not noble, not pretty, but effective. Here's the wild part. Gladiator schools were not chaos. They were surprisingly organised. The Ludi operated almost like martial arts academies, structured, disciplined, with a code. Fights were choreographed at first, then gradually given more freedom as skill increased. Some doctores would even stage mock battles in front of small invited crowds for practice. You weren't just taught to fight, you were taught how to entertain, to bleed in just the right places, to die with posture if it came to that. You might not realise it now, but you're already being watched. There's a small balcony overlooking the yard, and every so often someone in fine robes leans over the railing, squinting at the trainees. A senator, a sponsor, maybe even someone from the arena committee. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the moment they decide you're ready, you're going to be fed to the masses. Probably in a small art event first, one of those low-level opening acts before the real carnage begins. That's how it usually goes. A few disposable rookies, some animal baiting, maybe a stage battle between prisoners dressed as mythological monsters. Then the veterans come in for the main event. If you're lucky, you survive your debut. If not, well, at least you'll die pretty. During break, you collapse under a shaded awning with a few others. A Germanic guy named Varno hands you a piece of dried fig. His nose has been broken so many times it's practically inverted. You're quick, he says between chews. That's good. You'll need that when you fight someone slower. They hate that. He grins, revealing a gold tooth. You have no idea where he got that. Probably a story behind it. Probably ends with blood, and you ask him how long he's been here. 3 years, he says. 24 matches. Won 19. You raise your eyebrows. That's rare. Survivors like him, few and far between. They keep me around because I smile when I win, he adds with a wink, and because I lose just often enough to make the bets interesting. You start to realise something. The game isn't just about combat. It's about playing the odds, keeping the crowd invested, building a persona. A boring fighter might win every match and still be forgotten. But a memorable one, they live forever. In songs, on frescoes, in gossip whispered through bathhouses. Quirky fact for the day, some gladiators had actual fan clubs. Women would scrawl love notes on arena walls. Kreshton's The Net Fighter holds my heart, one piece of graffiti read. Others had dolls made in their likeness or were invited to parties hosted by the bored noblewomen who liked their men sweaty and possibly doomed. Gladiator fame wasn't just tolerated, it was encouraged, as long as you didn't forget who owned you. But there's a scholarly twist. Historians still argue about how voluntary gladiators actually had it. Some claim many entered the arena willingly, especially debtors, thrill-seekers or disgraced soldiers. Others point out that yes, a few chose the path, but most were enslaved or condemned. The whole volunteer gladiator idea might be Roman PR, a way to make the bloodbath feel more palatable. They wanted this, the Empire said, and maybe some did, but a lot more didn't. The day ends with you sparring again. This time you win. A clean, controlled hit across your opponent's ribs that knocks him backward into the dust. The doctor doesn't praise you. He just nods once and tells you to help your opponent up. You do. That's the rule here. Respect the fight, respect the fighter, until you're in the real arena. Then it's just survival. That night, as you sit by the flickering torch in your cell, helmet resting beside you like a sleeping monster, you start to feel something dangerous. Confidence, not arrogance, just a flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, you're not going to die in your first match. But then again, everyone thinks that. Sleep isn't sleep anymore. It's a series of short, shallow dips into unconsciousness, interrupted by the snore of the guy across the cell or the distant groan of someone throwing up barley mash. But this time you wake to something different. A change in smell. The usual aromas, sweat, old iron, dust are there, but something new rides in with the thin morning air. Charcoal smoke, roasting meat, fresh bread. The city's cooking today, and that only means one thing: festival games. You can hear it already, faint but growing, music drifting in from the city, horns and drums, crowd chatter echoing over stone streets. The games don't start for hours, but the build-up is everything. You're not fighting today. Not yet. But the entire ludus is vibrating with tension. Some of the veterans sharpen blades slowly, calmly. Others kneel in corners, murmuring to their gods or gripping talismans made from animal teeth, bones, or knots of hair. You're just trying to breathe. After roll call, you're marched into the training hall but told to drop your weapons. No drills today. Instead, you're led to a side chamber that smells like salt, smoke, and something you can't quite place, something metallic and sweet. There's a large table at the centre, and standing around it are two men you haven't seen before. One wears fine robes, gold rings stacked on each finger. The other is thinner, pale, and has a scroll tucked under one arm. Sponsors. The one in the robes walks the line of trainees like he's picking fruit. His eyes linger on scars, on posture, on who looks like they've survived something. He says nothing, but every once in a while he nods slightly and the pale man scratches a mark on the scroll. You don't know what they're marking, but your gut tells you this is the list. The roster for the next Munis. You're passed over, for now. You feel a wave of relief and a weird kind of disappointment. A few of your cellmates are chosen. One of them, the guy with the twisted nose who helped you wrap your leg, flashes you a quick grin as he's led away. He doesn't come back that night. So instead of dying today, you get to observe. You and a few others are marched to the amphitheatre, not the grand Colosseum yet, but one of the smaller arenas on the city outskirts, used for training matches, local games, and warm-ups. Still holds thousands. You're kept behind the gates, where the prep happens. You get to see it all, the costuming, the pre-fight rituals, the last-minute gear checks. Fighters psyching themselves up with chants, pacing in circles, punching their own chests. One retiarius, a net fighter, closes his eyes and paints red stripes on his arms with some kind of berry juice, whispering something in Greek. The gates open with a deep groan, and the light pours in like liquid fire. The crowd noise explodes, deafening. You can't see the audience yet, but you feel them, like a storm cloud that's alive and hungry. The first match starts. Two unfamiliar fighters, probably veterans, dancing across the sand with perfect form, landing blows that are flashy but controlled. The crowd roars at every spin, every near hit. You realise this is what they meant by entertainment. These men aren't just fighting, they're performing. Then come the rookies. Your cellmate walks out, squinting into the sun, weapon at his side. You're holding your breath. He's matched with a Murmillo, big and slow. You know how he fights. He's fast, clever, there's hope. The fight lasts 2 minutes. Your cellmate gets in 2 good hits. Then his opponent feints, steps left, and plunges his sword under the ribs. Clean, efficient, but not dramatic enough. The Murmillo lifts him up for the final blow, bashing him to the ground, then circles the arena, raising his arms to the crowd. He waits. The crowd shouts. It's mixed. Some want mercy, some want blood. The editor, the official in charge, raises a thumb. Not up, not down, somewhere in between. Interpreted however he feels in the moment. The Murmillo plunges the sword one last time. It's done. You don't even realise you've been clenching your fists until your nails draw blood. The body is dragged out feet first by slaves dressed as Sharon, the ferryman of the underworld. They bang hammers against the floor next to the head. You ask one of the veterans what that means. He grunts. To make sure he's not faking. Here's your fact of the day. Roman audiences loved theatrics, but they weren't stupid. Faking death to avoid execution was a known trick. So the Charon slaves would tap the head with a hammer. If there was any movement, any sign the corpse was breathing, it meant a second death was coming. The real one. That hammer? Not symbolic, just lethal. You're taken back to the ludus in silence. Everyone's watching their own feet, eyes heavy, jaws set. No one mentions your cellmate. No one has to. His gear's already being cleaned and stored for someone else. That's how fast memory dies here. The next few days pass in brutal blur. No more basic drills, now it's match prep. You train for scenarios, 2 against 1, animal ambushes, sudden changes in terrain. They flood the yard and force you to fight in ankle-deep water. They light torches to simulate night battles. They even tie one arm behind your back and in case of injury, they say. But everyone knows it's just to see who cracks under pressure. During one of these drills, a guy breaks, just shatters, drops his weapon, collapses in the mud, sobbing uncontrollably. Doesn't speak Latin, doesn't seem to understand where he is. One of the guards hauls him out of the ring. Later, someone says he was transferred to the beast pits, the venations. That's what they do with the unfit, throw them to the lions, literally. So let's talk diet. Because you're eating like an elite athlete. If elite athletes dined in prisons, the standard gladiator meal, barley, beans, ash, lots of it. You're told it builds strength and heals bones. And weirdly, it kind of works. You're filling out. Your skin's rougher, your shoulders broader. You still crave meat though. The rich folks in the stands eat goose and olives and roasted boar. You get porridge with a side of despair. Quirky fact, gladiators were nicknamed hordearii, barley men. It wasn't meant as a compliment. Roman elites saw barley as peasant food. But for gladiators, it was fuel. It bulked you up, slowed down bleeding, and gave you just enough energy to swing a sword for 10 minutes straight without passing out. You'll take it. There's still debate among scholars whether this diet was deliberate or just cheap. Some argue it was nutritionally designed, one of the earliest examples of performance-based meal planning. Others think it was simply the easiest way to keep slaves alive without spending money. Both might be true. Like most things in Rome, it's equal parts genius and cruelty. As you lie down that night, legs sore, stomach full of barley and ash, you can't stop thinking about your cellmate, the way he raised his shield, the way he crumpled, the silence that followed. It's not grief exactly, it's preparation. His death wasn't a tragedy, it was a lesson, a brutal one. And tomorrow that lesson continues. The next morning, the doctor is in a worse mood than usual, which is saying something considering his default setting is murderous thundercloud. He's already pacing the yard before sunrise, barking orders before your feet even hit the sand. Today he's not just angry, he's focused, and that never bodes well for anyone in his line of sight. "You fight like sheep," he roars, swinging a whip at the ground. "Soft and fat, Rome wants wolves." You get the idea pretty quickly. Today's not about skill, it's about pain. You're going to be broken down and rebuilt. And if you don't survive the first half of that, well, Rome's got plenty more bodies to throw at the problem. But first, a little pep talk, if you can call it that. The doctor circles you and the other trainees like a vulture sizing up dinner. Then he stops in front of you, eyes narrowed, voice low. "You think your blade will save you?" he asks. "The blade is nothing. Fear is the blade." Then he walks away, leaving you with a quote you're not sure if you're supposed to ponder or panic over. The training starts with pellis drills. You're ordered to attack a leather-covered post non-stop for 10 straight minutes. Slash, thrust, shield bash, over and over, until your shoulders scream and your grip starts to slide from sweat. No breaks. If you pause, even to blink too long, you get a crack across the back from a wooden rod. One guy passes out. The guards just step over him. Next is endurance. You're sent running laps in full armour around the yard, your helmet turning your breath into hot soup. Every time someone slows down, the doctor makes everyone start over. You learn very quickly that weakness isn't just punished individually, it brings the whole group down. And in a place where survival is already a group effort, that's how enemies are made. Eventually, after hours of drills, the doctor claps his hands. The worst part's coming. "Time to meet your real trainer," he says. You turn and see a man you've never noticed before. He's leaning against the wall, arms crossed, face calm. Too calm. He steps forward, says nothing, and gestures for you to follow. The guards nudge you into a smaller courtyard behind the main yard, shaded and circular, with a floor stained deep brown from repeated use. Here, the man finally speaks.
"I am your lanistae," he says, "which means I own you, but also I keep you alive."
His name is Gaius Pollio, and he doesn't look like a killer. He looks like a banker. Soft robes, neat beard, a calm voice like still water. But there's something cold behind his eyes. You feel it. He's done terrible things, and he remembers every one of them with clarity and pride. Gaius explains the rules of the arena, not the ones shouted by guards, but the real ones. "You're not soldiers," he says. "You're theatre. You're wine poured for the gods. Each match is a dance, and if you step wrong, you die." Then he teaches you the concept of missio, a formal request for mercy. If you lose but fight well, you can raise a finger asking for pardon. The editor of the games, sitting in his little velvet-covered throne, will decide whether you live or die. Sometimes the crowd decides for him. They cheer, Gaius says, and you breathe. They boo, and your blood soaks the sand. You think back to your cellmate, the way the Murmillo waited, the way the crowd wavered. It wasn't a fight, it was a vote. Here's your historical fact for today. The lanistae was often the most powerful person in a gladiator's life. More than the emperor, more than the guards, even more than the gods, depending on who you asked. A skilled lanistae could make or break your fate. He chose who fought, when and how, but he also protected his investment. Training a gladiator cost money. Losing one to sloppiness or bad matchups was wasteful, so a good lanistae walked the tightrope between cruelty and preservation. Gaius walks that tightrope with a glass of wine in hand. After the lesson, you're finally given a short reprieve, barely enough to sit, catch your breath, and rub the grit from your eyes. Then, just when you think the day might be winding down, you're sent to the medicus, the ludus physician. The medicus is a gaunt man with fingers like spider legs and an unsettling fondness for cutting things. You're not entirely sure whether he's fixing people or just studying how they break. He checks your joints, examines your healing bruises, mutters about inflammation and calcified ligaments. Then he offers you a small clay cup of liquid that smells like vinegar and mushrooms. "Drink," he says. "It helps the blood." You're not sure if it's medicine or poison, but you down it. It burns, your vision swims, then it passes. Fringe fact? Roman gladiators were some of the earliest test subjects for sports medicine. Ludus physicians studied injuries, tried experimental treatments, and even performed crude surgeries. Some gladiators received better healthcare than ordinary Roman citizens, at least until they stopped being useful. Later, as dusk falls, you're summoned for a ritual. Not religious, not exactly, but close. You're led with 5 others into the shrine at the edge of the ludus, where a small statue of Mars Ultor, the avenging god of war, sits surrounded by offerings. You're told to place a drop of blood at his feet. A cut is made on your forearm. You squeeze out a few drops. The floor is already stained. The air smells like copper and incense. "Fight like you're already dead," the priest murmurs. "Because you are." You don't sleep that night. You try. But your body's too sore, your mind too loud. You stare at the flickering shadows on the ceiling, counting the breaths of the men beside you. One snores, one mumbles, one weeps quietly into his straw. And beneath it all, your mind replays the words of the lanistae. "You are wine poured for the gods." You wonder if you'll ever get to choose your own fate again, or if the crowd, the editors, the thumb and the sword have taken that from you forever. The first time that they march you into the arena, not for training but for a public exhibition match, it doesn't feel real at first. The air's too sharp, the noise too big, and the sand too clean. Everything is heightened, buzzing at the edges. You stand just behind the iron gate, helmet under your arm, fingers twitching against the curve of your shield. Around you, the other fighters shuffle quietly, adjusting straps, mouthing prayers, or doing nothing at all, already too deep in their own heads to react. A horn sounds, long, low, and terrifying. The gate groans open, and the sunlight slams into your face like a slap. You step forward. And now it feels real. There are thousands of them, packed shoulder to shoulder across rows and rows of stone seats, stretching upward in a wide half circle, You've seen crowds before, markets, festivals, soldiers returning home, but nothing like this. This is the city distilled into one organism, one voice, and that voice is hungry. You walk into the centre, forming a line with the other new recruits. This is what they call the probatio, the test match. Not a full-on gladiator spectacle, but a warm-up act. A way to see if you can handle the heat. Literally and metaphorically. No blood is expected. Not expected, but it happens. The editor for today's games, a local magistrate in rich robes and a laurel crown, rises and gives a half-hearted wave. The crowd claps. But they're not here for him. They're here for you. Well, what you represent. Violence, tension, the possibility of death before lunch. It's a different kind of religion. You're paired with a murmillo this time, a big guy with a fish-shaped helmet and a rectangular shield that could double as a door. He's not new. His steps are too confident, his grip too relaxed. You've seen that kind before. He's here to make you look good, or to expose you. The doctor stands at the edge, arms crossed, unreadable, no shouting now. This isn't his world, this is the crowd's. You nod to your opponent. He nods back just slightly. Then the trumpet blares and you move. The first few seconds are instinct. Circle left. Test his range. Watch the angle of his blade. He lunges. You block. The force of the hit rattles your shoulder like a slammed door. You counter, slashing low, the cicada just grazing his thigh. The crowd gasps. It's a good sound. You want more of it. He presses harder now, shield bashing forward, trying to crowd you. You roll out of the way and stumble. Your knee hits the sand hard. You scramble back to your feet. He waits, just a beat to see if you'll break. You don't. Another lunge, another block. This time your blade catches the curve of his helmet and rings like a bell. The crowd cheers. No one's dying in this match. Not unless someone makes a fatal mistake. But the blood is real enough. His or yours, you're not sure. You taste iron at the edge of your tongue and your shoulders going numb. But your feet keep moving. That's what they taught you. Never stop. Movement is life. Then something strange happens. You start to feel the crowd. Not just hear them, but feel their energy ripple across your skin. Every swing, every close call, every parried blow feeds them. They lean forward, they shout, they live through you. You're not just fighting, you're acting. And for the first time, you understand what they meant when they said Rome loves a good show more than a good man. The match ends in a draw. No dramatic finish. Just two exhausted men standing upright while the editor nods and the gate is lifted. You walk off the sand to polite applause, your heart still thundering, your hands trembling with adrenaline. You didn't die, you didn't even lose, and in this world that's a kind of victory. Back at the ludus, no one says much. A few of the others slap you on the back, grinning through broken teeth. The murmillo you fought gives you a nod over his dinner of barley and flatbread. There's a mutual respect there. Not friendship, no one has the energy for that, but recognition. You stood in the dust with him and didn't break. Later that night, Gaius Pollio finds you in the corridor. His hands are tucked into his sleeves and he's smiling that same cold, practiced smile. You didn't embarrass me, he says. You might even be worth something. Then he turns and disappears into the shadows, his sandals whispering across the stone floor. Fun fact, there were actual rankings for gladiators, like athletes today. You could rise in the hierarchy based on wins, skill and fan popularity. Some even had stage names. Catchy, intimidating, meant to thrill the crowds. Felix the Swift, Gannicus the Untamed. Some fighters even had their own branding carved into public walls by fans. The right combination of talent and luck could make you famous. It could also get you killed faster once your value as a spectacle went up. Of course, not everyone agreed on how real the matches were. Some modern historians argue that many fights were staged or lightly choreographed, especially the earlier ones in a day's programme. Others insist that while some drama was baked in, the risk was always real. Even a dull blade can kill, even a staged fall can turn fatal. Especially when one of you decides not to follow the script. And let's not forget the business side of it all. These test matches weren't just about training you. They were about showcasing potential investments. Wealthy citizens in the stands might be watching closely, picking out their favourites. Not to pity, to bet on, to sponsor. You're not just a fighter, you're a racehorse in bronze sandals. Later, as you settle into the straw, aching but buzzing, you feel something you haven't felt since your first day. A strange, unwelcome sliver of hope. Not freedom, that's too big a dream. But maybe survival, maybe success, Maybe, if you're careful, you could work this system long enough to earn your rudies, the wooden sword that symbolises freedom. But for every freed gladiator, there are 100 more who bled out quietly in the sand. You know this. Everyone does. The crowd might scream for your name one day, but they'll forget it the next. Still, you were in the arena today. You stood, you fought, you lived, and for now, that's enough. The morning after your first public match hits harder than any blow from the Murmillo's sword. Your limbs feel like stone, your shoulders are on fire, and you've discovered muscles you didn't even know existed until they decided to ache in unison. You try to sit up and immediately regret it, but the others around you, most of them veterans, are already on their feet, casually wiping dried blood from their armour and muttering about the day's assignments like it's just another Tuesday. And for them it is. No one congratulates you. Not because you didn't earn it, but because surviving a first match doesn't make you special, it makes you usable. And now that you've proven you can at least move without crying, the real pressure starts. Today is a day of spectacle, another Munus, but a much bigger one. Full arena, major sponsor, animals, executions, and featured matches with well-known champions whose names the crowd actually remembers. You won't be fighting today, but you will be participating. Observation duty, they call it. You'll be marched into the Colosseum itself to watch the events unfold, not for fun, but to learn, and maybe to terrify you into better performance. The Colosseum. Even if you'd never seen it before, you know what it is. You can feel its size before you even glimpse its shadow. You're marched there under armed escort. Your group a motley parade of bruised bodies and training tunics. The crowd begins to gather early. Vendors selling wine and fried cheese. Kids climbing up statues to get a better view. Drunks already shouting their bets before the gates even open. The smell hits first: charcoal, grease, sweet wine, sweat, and animal dung, an assault on the senses. Then you see it. The Colosseum rises like a monster out of the earth. 4 levels of arches, towering high enough to scrape the sky, every inch of it carved to impress. Statues fill the niches, flags flutter at the top, and guards in polished armour patrol the entrances with military precision. You're herded through a side door, past corridors that twist and dip, into a waiting area below the stands. You look up and realise the crowd is already pouring in, the noise like thunder. And the sand above is clean for now, a blank canvas. Your group is allowed into a shaded section of the lower tiers, close enough to see everything, far enough to stay out of reach. You sit, you wait, and then the games begin. First up, executions. Condemned criminals are dragged out, half-naked and trembling. Some have murder in their eyes, others have already given up. You're told they're sentenced at bestias, to the beasts. The gates creak open, the crowd quiets, and then the animals come. A lion first, huge and impossibly golden, its mane rippling like a curtain. It doesn't attack right away, it circles, sniffs. The condemned man whimpers and backs toward the wall. Then it lunges. You look away, but not fast enough. The scream that follows is the kind that stains your memory. Then come bears, then wild dogs. One man tries to fight with a stick. Another actually lands a blow that makes the crowd cheer before he's ripped apart. It's not a fight, it's slaughter. Theatre for those who need their justice loud and messy. Beside you, one of the other trainees is gripping his knees, whispering something over and over. It's either a prayer or a list of ways he doesn't want to die. You sit through the whole thing. No one's allowed to leave early. This is Rome's lesson. This is what happens when you're weak. This is what they cheer for. And if you want to stay out of the beast pit, you better give them something better to scream about. Then the arena is cleaned. Fast, efficient. Slaves rush out with shovels and rakes. Sand is smoothed, blood is brushed away. The show must go on. Now come the real matches. Names are announced. Cassius the Black, Felix the Swift, Quintus the Bone Crusher, and the crowd erupts. These men are stars. They step into the sun like they own it. Weapons gleaming, faces calm. You watch every move, the footwork, the shield angles, the timing. It's beautiful in a horrifying way, and so much faster than you imagined. One Retiarius flips over a Murmillo's shield and lands a trident blow to the chest in one move. Another drops his opponent with a single strike to the knee, then stands over him as the crowd chants, "Ugula! Ugula!" Slit his throat. He doesn't. He raises a hand asking for mercy. The editor grants it. The crowd actually cheers harder. A good show earns grace, sometimes. You notice something else. The best fighters. They don't just kill. They perform. One guy does a spin move after a victory, twirls his sword and tosses it in the air. It's ridiculous. And it works. Coins are thrown from the stands, women could even scream his name, even kids chant it. That's when it really hits you. This isn't just about fighting well. This is about surviving long enough to become a character they care about. Once they know your name, they're more likely to root for you. And if they root for you, they might just save your life when the moment comes. Historical truth bomb for the night. In many games, the decision to spare a fighter wasn't made by the emperor or the editor. It was made by the mob. The crowd had power. Their voices carried weight. If they screamed for mercy, even the most bloodthirsty officials often obeyed. Not out of kindness, but politics. You don't ignore the will of the people when they've been drinking all morning and have knives in their sandals. And here's a fringe fact. Some gladiators became so beloved, their images were printed on lamps, walls, even jewellery. People wore rings with tiny cameos of their favourite fighters. One guy named Celidus had graffiti praising him all over Pompeii. He was described as Suspirium Puellarum, the heartthrob of the girls. Imagine that. You kill people for a living, and someone turns you into ancient fan fiction. The final match of the day ends with a double kill. Both fighters mortally wounded, both collapsing in the sand, clutching at their own guts. The crowd goes silent. Not out of respect, out of awe. You feel it like a cold breath across your shoulders. Then it's over. Trumpets blare. The crowd begins to spill out, humming with excitement, drunk on violence and wine. You're marched back to the ludus in silence. No one speaks. No one has the energy. All you can hear is the crunch of sandals on gravel and the distant echo of cheers you'll never forget. Back in the cell, the light has changed. It's golden now, softer. But you don't see beauty in it. You see blood in every shadow. You lie down slowly, body sore from stillness more than motion. And for the first time since you arrived, you feel it. Not fear, not even so dread, but resolve. That if you have to die, you'll do it with a name in the crowd's mouth. And maybe, just maybe, you'll hear someone scream for your life instead of your death. You start dreaming of death, but not your own. In your sleep, you see the faces of the men dragged away by lions, the twitching limbs of fighters split open in the sand, the ones who raised their hands in mercy and still got a sword through the heart. You see the crowd too, laughing, roaring, cheering at each kill, like they're watching a magic trick. And maybe they are. The trick is making a man vanish into legend with one good swing. When you wake, your mouth is dry and your thoughts even drier. There's no time to process it. The guards are already shouting, clanking swords against the bars, pulling everyone out into the courtyard. You move without thinking, just muscle memory at this point. Gear up, line up, don't talk, don't fall behind. Today, you're told, is a sacrum, a religious observance held within the ludus, but calling it a religious event is generous. What it really is gladiators trying to feel human again. Not in a sentimental way, in a desperate, bone-deep way, because after what you saw in the Colosseum, you realise just how easily you could be turned into meat for sport. So you do what humans have always done when they're powerless. You find something to believe in. There's no grand temple, just a small chamber at the edge of the training yard, converted into a shrine. Inside, it's lit by torches, thick with incense, and dominated by a statue of Mithras, sword raised, bull beneath his foot. He's a favourite among gladiators. Warrior god, protector of the brave, blood sacrifice and all, appropriate. A few older fighters lead the ritual. They chant in whispers, passing a bowl of wine around, sprinkling it on the floor, dabbing it onto foreheads. You're handed a pinch of salt and told to drop it into the flame. It crackles instantly, and the room fills with silence. No one speaks. No one needs to. This isn't about theatrics. It's about remembering that you're not just bodies with numbers and weapons. You're men. Frightened, bruised, desperate, but still men. And here's something they never tell you in school. Many gladiators joined mystery cults. Secret, tight-knit religious groups like the Cult of Mithras, where membership required initiation and silence. These weren't the gods of the upper class. They were for the margins, for slaves, soldiers, and yes, fighters. Brotherhood in blood, rebirth through violence. Sound familiar? After the ritual, you return to the yard, and training resumes like nothing happened. But something has changed. There's a weight to your movements now, like the ritual left a residue on your soul. You train harder, strike cleaner, Maybe it's the gods, maybe it's fear. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. The doctor pairs you up again with the murmillo you fought in your debut. He grunts in recognition and tightens the straps on his shield. This time the fight is different. Not just sparring, it's timed, watched, measured. You circle, feint, test each other's rhythm. There's respect now. You both know what the other is capable of. He lunges, and you parry, you counter, and he absorbs it with a grunt. Blow for blow, sweat flying, sand kicked up with every pivot. You're not just surviving, you're strategizing, controlling space, timing, thinking. That's new, and it matters. Because at the edge of the yard, Gaius Pollio watches, and beside him, a Roman noblewoman, veil pulled halfway across her face, eyes cold and curious. A potential sponsor. Sponsorship means more than money. It means protection, popularity, maybe even influence over match assignments. The rich don't sponsor gladiators out of pity. They do it for status, like betting on a horse, but bloodier and more fashionable. Gladiators become their property, their walking mascots. Some even wear jewellery with their sponsor's name etched into it. It's branding, literally. You spar harder, cleaner, not flashy, precise. Let the murmillo waste energy on big swings. You sidestep, draw him out, catch him with a strike across the backplate that sends him stumbling. The crowd, what little there is, claps. You don't bow, that's not your style, but you nod to your opponent who returns it, chest heaving. Later you find a coin slipped under your bowl at dinner. Not Roman currency, Greek, bronze, worthless here, but it's a message. Someone noticed. You don't know who. Maybe the woman, maybe Gaius, maybe even the murmillo. Either way, it's the beginning of something, or the warning of something. In the evening, as torches light the hallways and the yard empties out, you find yourself drifting toward the shrine again. Not for another ritual, just to stand, to think. Someone's already there, the Egyptian veteran with the glassy eye and the voice like gravel. He nods at you, then asks without looking, "You believe in anything?" You don't answer at first, then, "I believe in not dying." He chuckles. Good place to start. Here's a strange little detail most people overlook. Gladiators were superstitious to the point of obsession. They wore charms under their armour, whispered spells, avoided certain foods or days of the week. One guy refused to put on his left sandal before his right. Another smeared mud from a grave into his helmet before every match. You laugh at it, until the day you forget your routine and lose. The Egyptian passes you a carved amulet, a worn piece of bone with a symbol you don't recognise. "Keep it," he says, "or don't. Up to you." Then he walks off without another word. You tuck it into your belt, not because you believe in magic, but because down here, in the shadow of death, belief might be the last kind of armour you've got. That night the wind picks up outside the ludus, rattling doors and stirring up dust. Someone somewhere is coughing hard, maybe from a cracked rib or an infection. But you don't move. You lie there with the amulet beside you, your fingers curled around the coin in your palm. Tomorrow's not a fight day, but it's coming. You can feel it. The crowds whisper, the weight of the gods, the itch in your hands when you think about the blade. Soon they'll call your name again. And next time the choice won't be between life and death. It'll be between being forgotten and becoming legend. The day breaks cool and cloudy, a rare relief in the Roman summer, but you don't trust it. The sky may be soft and grey, but the ludus is coiled tight with tension, buzzing with a kind of quiet you've come to associate with bad news. You know it before the guards even show up. You feel it in the way the veterans are checking their gear too early, how Gaius Pollio hasn't made his usual slow tour of the yard, and how the doctor is muttering to himself while pacing the walls like a caged beast. Then come the names. It's not a list, it's a ritual. A scroll is unrolled and a guard with a voice like cracking leather begins reading aloud, drawing out every syllable like he wants you to savour it. Yours is the third name called. You knew it was coming. That first match was just a preview. This one's real. A full munus, with all the stakes, the rituals, the crowd, the pressure, the arena, the finality. You spend the morning in the armamentarium, the armoury, being fitted for your real battle gear. The leather's stiffer, the bronze heavier, the padding scratchier. You feel the weight of it settle onto your shoulders like a sentence. Your helmet is polished, and for the first time your name is etched into the inside lip. It's not your real name. It's your arena name. Corvus, the raven, chosen for your sharp curved blade, and maybe because your eyes have grown a little too comfortable watching people die. You're matched against a new opponent, a Hoplomachus, trained to mimic Greek spearmen. He's taller than you, wiry, with legs like spring coils and a face like old marble. You've seen him in the yard, fast, calculated, dangerous, not flashy, just efficient, and that's worse. In preparation, the doctor spends an hour drilling you alone. No shouting today, no insults, just instructions, fast and quiet. He'll jab high, then aim for the ankle. Hoplomachus always does. Use the shield, keep the curve of the blade up. Don't chase, let him come to you. You nod. You're not scared. Not really. The fear is still there, somewhere deep, but it's been folded down into something tighter, more useful. It's focus now, tension wrapped into readiness. At midday, they feed you. Not barley mash this time. Bread, dried figs, wine cut with honey, and a slab of meat, good meat, which tells you everything you need to know. This could be your last meal, and they want you full when you bleed. You spend the next hour alone in your cell, staring at your armour, trying to breathe. The coin is still in your palm, and the amulet is tied under your tunic with a strip of cloth. You whisper a prayer to whoever's listening, not for mercy, but for the chance to make them remember you. Because here's the brutal truth. Most gladiators died forgotten. Buried in unmarked graves, their names lost, their stories overwritten by the next guy with a flashier death. And the only way to beat that system is to become bigger than the sword. You have to mean something. Before the fight, you and the others are brought to the underbelly of the Colosseum, the Hypogeum, a maze of tunnels, cages, lifts and shadows. It stinks of animal musk, blood and oil. You pass cages with lions pacing behind thick bars, slaves rushing to prepare props and costumes, men in masks painted to look like gods or monsters. It's madness down here. All part of the illusion. The show. The myth machine. And then you hear it. The roar of the crowd, not applause, not cheers. A roar, like a sea breaking against cliffs. It builds and echoes, rising up through the stone until it fills your bones. The gate before you begins to creak open. Your name, your arena name, is announced by a herald in a booming voice. Corvus the Thracian. You step forward into the light. The sun hits you hard and the heat rises from the sand like steam. Your vision narrows instantly. Not from fear, your eyes just lock in, on your opponent, on the sand, on the edge of the crowd. The rest of the arena fades. He's already there, helmet gleaming, spear in hand. He doesn't move, just watches. The editor signals, the trumpet blares, the crowd quiets. Then he moves. You're ready, mostly. He lunges, high jab, exactly as expected. You deflect with your shield, step left. He pivots fast, spear down toward your ankle, but you're already in motion, twisting away, striking low. Your blade glances off his greaves, no damage, but it's a start. He's fast, but so are you, and more importantly, you're hungry. The fight goes on like a storm in slow motion, dust flying, metal clashing, breath heaving. The crowd is shouting now your names, random instructions, curses, praise. A few coins land in the sand around you. You don't dare look, and then comes the moment. He overcommits on a jab. Just slightly, just enough. You knock the spear aside, rush in close, and slam your shield into his chest. He stumbles. You hook your blade low and tear across his thigh. He drops. The crowd erupts. He raises a hand, missio. A request for mercy. His helmet tips slightly, like he's looking at you, waiting. Now you wait too. The editor rises. The crowd leans forward, chanting, debating, screaming over one another. You can't hear your heartbeat anymore. You can only hear them. Then, a hand signal. Thumb sideways. Indecision. The editor looks to the crowd again. They shout louder. Some chant your name, and then finally the thumb turns. Up. Mercy granted. You step back. The Hoplomachus is pulled away by two attendants. His leg's a mess, but he'll live. Maybe. You're left alone in the arena. The herald shouts your name again. You raise your sword. And for a few seconds the crowd is yours. Not the Emperor's, not Rome's, yours. Here's your quirky fact. Gladiators who spared opponents and fought with honour were sometimes rewarded with golden tokens, known as laureata, which could be traded for privileges, better food, better sleeping quarters, or even eventually their freedom. It was a system that made death both punishment and currency. As you leave the arena, sand still clinging to your calves, the roar of the crowd behind you, you don't feel triumph. You feel clarity. You're still alive. And now they know your name. You don't feel the pain until you're halfway back to the ludus, armour slung over your shoulder, blood your own and someone else's drying into your skin. Starts in your legs, slow and creeping, then catches fire in your lower back and shoulders. All the places you held tension during the fight. The euphoria of surviving wears off fast. What's left is grit in your mouth, sweat in your eyes, and the sickening knowledge that this wasn't a victory. It was an audition. You did well. No one tells you that outright. Not Gaius, not the Doctore. But you can see it in the way people look at you now. They shift when you enter a room. A few nod. One of the older fighters even hands you the better side of the bread loaf during supper without comment. That's as close to respect as you're going to get here. For now. After dark, when the yard quiets and the guards are less aggressive in their patrols, you sit with a few of the other survivors under the shadow of the training scaffolding. There's talk. Soft. Tired but charged. Everyone's buzzing about what's coming next. Word is out that a senator's son has been granted his own munus, a vanity event, and he's requested unblooded talent to make the show more unpredictable. That means newer fighters. That means you. The veterans scoff. He'll want drama, says one of them, a Gaul with teeth filed to points. He'll match lovers, brothers, teacher and student. Anything that gets the crowd to gasp. Another laughs. Last time they dressed 5 gladiators as Amazons and made them raid a fake Roman fort. The fort had lions in it. I'm serious. You ask if these stories are true. Most are. Some aren't. But in Rome, the line between fact and propaganda is as thin as a razor. And honestly, it doesn't matter. Because in the arena, the myth is the reality. The blood is real. The weapons are sharp. The crowd doesn't care what's scripted or not. They just want something to remember over dinner. You drift back toward your cell and pause by a wooden beam near the training ring. It's carved with dozens of short names, some familiar, some forgotten. You find one you recognise, Crescens. He was good, agile, clever with a shield. You saw him take down 2 men in a team match. Then a week later, he slipped in the arena and bled out in the sun while the crowd argued over whether to save him. Spoiler, they didn't. You scratch your own mark into the wood, small, unassuming. But it's there now, your name's in the wood. The rest is up to time. The next morning you get the official summons. The Senators' Games are scheduled for Saturnalia, Rome's wildest, rowdiest holiday. You'll fight that afternoon. Mid-tier billing. Not quite the main event, but close enough to matter. And your opponent? You're told you'll find out when the match begins. Classic. You spend the morning in a blur. The gear's already familiar now, your body aches less. Maybe you're just used to it. You practice footwork, but there's no point in rehearsing too much. If they want unpredictability, they'll give you chaos. The crowd for Saturnalia Games is different. Louder, drunker, meaner somehow. You're taken into the waiting cell under the Colosseum, where you can hear them above, stomping and clapping and shouting things that blur into one long howl. Vendors sell sweet wine, hot nuts, and gossip about who will die today. There's a man painted silver pretending to be Mars, another pretending to be a dead gladiator, complete with fake blood, moaning as he stumbles past children who shriek with laughter. It's and you're the fireworks. Finally the gate groans open. You step into the sun once more, the sand nearly white under your feet. And across from you, your opponent emerges. You freeze. It's Titus. He trained beside you, ate beside you, helped you bind your wrist that time you overextended during drills, the man who gave you that dried fig in your second week. Now he's holding a spear, staring at you through a slitted helmet. The crowd doesn't know, but you do. You're not sure if he's as shocked as you are. His helmet hides everything. But he doesn't hesitate. The match begins. The crowd shouts. The trumpets scream. And suddenly, you're circling each other, hearts pounding in sync, both playing a role neither of you agreed to. He attacks first, fast, sharp, testing you. Not enough to kill, but enough to say this is happening. You block, respond, careful not to go for anything fatal, you feint. He retreats. You trade blows like men checking a box, waiting for the other to call it off. But the crowd doesn't like hesitation. You hear it. Booing, chanting. They want blood, not choreography, not mercy, just violence. Then Titus speaks, barely audible. Hit me, make it real. You blink. What? Shoulder. Then cut my thigh. Make it good. You do it. Fast. A slash to the shoulder pad. Then a twist and drag across his thigh. Not deep, but messy. He drops with a howl, Dramatic and perfect, the crowd erupts. They love it. The herald screams your name, you raise your arms, blood sprays across the sand, and he lies there, groaning, holding his leg. The editor pauses, then gives the signal. Mercy. Thumb up. Titus will live. You leave the arena alive, and so does he. It's your second win. You're 2 for 2. And more importantly, you played the game. You gave them what they wanted. A story. One they'll whisper tonight in the taverns. The day the Raven cut down his friend. Tragedy. Loyalty. Blood. Quirky historical fact. Sometimes gladiators were forced to fight friends, even so a family. Rome adored the idea of brother versus brother. It was theatre that mirrored the empire's own obsessions with loyalty and betrayal. There are documented cases of fathers fighting sons, trainers versus trainees, and the crowd ate it up like roasted chestnuts. Later, back in the cell, Titus limps past and flicks a grin at you. Not bad, he says. You ever consider stage work? You laugh, then wince. Your ribs are still bruised. That night, while the city erupts in Saturnalia madness, drunken parades, dice games in the streets, people swapping roles and stealing kisses, you lie on your straw mat, arms behind your head, staring at the stone ceiling. You didn't want to hurt him, but you did what you had to do, and in Rome, that's all that counts. You find out what your life is really worth on the open market of blood. Not in coin, not in status. In reaction. The way a crowd leans forward when you enter the arena. The way merchants start selling cheap little wooden figurines that vaguely resemble your helmet. The way Gaius Pollio nods in approval when someone mispronounces your name in front of him, but still bets 5 denarii on you. That's how you know you're becoming something valuable. Not someone, just something. And once you're valuable, the stakes change. The next week is a blur of drills and maintenance. Less fighting, more posing. You're told to rehearse certain gestures, how to raise your blade after a kill, how to drop to one knee and honour the fallen, how to pace the ring in a way that reads like dominance, not fatigue. It's all choreographed, down to the tilt of your head. The doctor doesn't yell as much anymore. He instructs. You're not cannon fodder now, you're an asset. Then Gaius Pollio calls you into his chamber. He sits on a low couch, draped in red, picking seeds from a fig with the calm of a man who's never once had to duck a sword. He gestures for you to sit, and you do, wary. There's wine on the table and fruit, and behind him, 2 scribes with styluses poised, waiting. You're popular, he says without preamble. The women shout your name, the betting houses are adjusting odds. He leans forward. So, it's time you start giving back. He explains the blood economy. Every gladiator match generates income. Tickets, bets, sponsorships, even merchandise. But there's more to it. The crowd's emotional investment is currency. The more they care about you, the more they spend. The more they spend, the more powerful your owner becomes. Gaius wants to leverage that. He wants you in a high-stakes fight, sponsored, headlining, publicised, with banners. And he wants you to lose. Not die, just lose. Make it close, dramatic, tragic, a near victory that ends in defeat. The other fighter, an older champion named Marius Ferro, is already booked to win. He's been struggling with injuries, needs a reputation boost. The fix is subtle, but it's there. You don't say anything at first, just sit there, jaw tight, while Gaius picks another fig seed from his teeth and says, "You'll take the fall, you'll live, you'll get a cut of the purse, a large one." This is where it gets ugly. You thought fighting to the death was the worst part of gladiator life. Turns out being useful is more complicated. Now you're not just surviving, you're navigating contracts, politics, expectations. If you refuse, they won't kill you. They'll bury you in bad matchups, strip your gear budget, feed you to someone untrained and furious. So you nod, slowly, and just like that, you're part of the system. Your next few days are spent preparing for the fight, not just physically but narratively. Marius is painted as the old warrior, the legend returning for one final glorious win. You're the rising star with too much pride, too fast, too young. The media, by which we mean the tavern barkeeps and arena criers, love it. The crowd splits into factions. Some are Team Marius, loyal to the old guard. Others, they want the Raven to fly. You're told to train hard, but not too hard. You need to lose convincingly, says the doctor. Not like a fool, like a man outclassed. You hate it. Not the losing, the fakeness, the manipulation. But you know the truth. Rome isn't about truth. It's about story. The fights are real, yes, but they're shaped, framed, edited in real time by the crowd's appetite and the sponsor's wallet. Here's your historical reality check. Gladiator matches weren't always spontaneous combat to the death. Many were semi-staged, with unofficial agreements between lanistae to preserve valuable fighters, or build storylines that would span across multiple events. Think wrestling, but with real weapons and actual fatalities when someone slipped or disobeyed. Your match is scheduled for a public holiday, Floralia, known for flowers, fertility and copious amounts of wine. The arena is decked out in blooms. Perfumed garlands hang from the balconies. Women in silk toss petals into the air as the first matches begin. You're held in the prep room, helmet in your lap, blade across your knees. Across the hall, Marius sits with his arms resting on his thighs, face carved from stone. He doesn't look at you. You respect that. This isn't personal, just business. Roman business. Then it's time. The gates open, the sun is blinding, the crowd is louder than ever, screaming both names. Marius, Corvus, Marius, Corvus. You walk onto the sand and realise how big this has become. Hundreds of banners ripple in the wind. Some bear your name, painted clumsily. You recognise none of the faces in the crowd, but they know you. The editor rises, the trumpet sounds, the fight begins. You don't hold back, that's part of the show. You fight hard, vicious, you land hits, you knock Marius down once, then let him get back up. He stumbles. You press just enough to get the crowd howling. They want you to win. That's the setup. The young fighter overwhelming the veteran. Then in the third exchange you slip, on purpose. Marius seizes the moment. A slash across your chest, superficial but bloody. You fall. He raises his blade. You raise your hand and missio, mercy. The editor hesitates, milking the tension. Then the thumb turns up. The crowd boos. They wanted the win, but they got the story instead. Marius helps you up. The crowd claps grudgingly. The payout comes later. You get half of what was promised. Gaius says expenses were deducted. Of course they were, you're learning. That night, back in your cell, you stare at the cut on your chest. It's shallow. It will scar, but not as deep as the one you feel inside. You're still alive. You're rising in fame, but something inside you knows now. There's no clean way to win here. Quirky fringe detail. Gladiator blood was sometimes collected after matches and sold as a cure for epilepsy and infertility. The belief was that it contained vitality, strength, and the spirit of Mars. What the audience couldn't get in the stands, they tried to drink later. You lie down, hands behind your head, eyes on the ceiling. Somewhere out there, someone's carving your name into a tavern wall. Somewhere else, someone's deciding your next fight. You don't get to control the game. But maybe, just maybe, you can learn how to cheat it. There's something deeply twisted about becoming desirable the closer you get to death. You've bled in the sand twice now, dodged a fixed fight, and limped your way into minor stardom. And suddenly, people outside the walls of the ludus know your name. Not just Rome's bloodthirsty gamblers or half-sloshed arena fans, but people with softer eyes, silk robes and agendas. Some want to sponsor you. Others want to own you. A few, they want to sleep with you. The first note comes hidden inside a loaf of bread, tucked right into the crust like a prize in a poisoned cake. You're tearing into your dinner, bland barley again, with a side of barely edible goat meat, when a slip of parchment drops into your lap. You glance around. No one's watching. The guards are too busy arguing over dice, and your cellmates are chewing in silence. You unfold it carefully. It's a short message written in ink that smells faintly floral. Corvus, your grace in battle shames the gods. I will see you from the imperial box tomorrow. Look up. The rose is mine. No name, just a symbol. A curling rose, inked beside the writing like a perfume signature. You crumple it, burn it later with a smuggled candle stub, but you don't forget it. The next day, between drills and sparring, Gaius Pollio calls you aside and smiles in that way he does when he's about to pretend he cares about your well-being. You're becoming quite the attraction, he says, idly spinning a ring on his pinky. The women ask about you, even the men, senators' wives, high-born daughters, widows with too much land and not enough amusement. You know where this is going, and it makes your stomach twist. He doesn't ask. He informs. Some sponsors want access, not just to the arena, to you, discreetly, for appearances, company, entertainment, and you're handsome enough. Your scars add intrigue. Don't look so dour. It's an honour. And honour. That word again. The elegant gloss over slavery, over being paraded, borrowed, touched. He offers you a choice, but it's a theatre. If you refuse, your next fight might mysteriously be against a heavily armoured net fighter with a reputation for accidental deaths. If you agree, your next match might include a silk robe and a silver coin under your pillow. And here's the brutal little historical truth behind it all. Gladiators were sex symbols, absolute sex icons, especially those who gained even a whisper of fame. Graffiti in Pompeii refers to them as the delight of the girls and the glory of the arena. Their appeal wasn't just in their victories, it was in their mortality. There was something intoxicating about sleeping with a man who might not survive the week. Forbidden fruit, but bleeding, so you agree, not with a handshake, not even with words, just by showing up when they tell you to. That night you're bathed, properly, for once. Scented oils, warm water and real soap. Your armour is polished, and your bruises are even dabbed with a touch of pigment to make you look more heroic than broken. They dress you in a tunic finer than anything you've worn in months. Sandals with gilded straps. Then they put you in a litter and carry you through the city like you're royalty instead of a decorated prisoner. You arrive at a domus, sprawling, walled, with guards at the gate and the musicians playing softly near the courtyard. A feast is in progress. Wine, fruit, meat sizzling on platters. And at the centre of it, reclining like a panther half awake, is the woman with the rose. She's older than you expected. Not old, just older. Confident. Wrapped in silk like its armour, bangles clinking as she gestures. The others at the party barely look at you. They've seen this before. She calls you over, doesn't use your real name. She says Corvus and you obey. She touches the scar on your arm, asks if it hurts. You say no. She laughs and pours you wine, feeding you a fig with her fingers like she's posing for a statue. The night is strange, soft in some ways, sharp in others. You don't hate it. You don't enjoy it either. It's an act, like the arena. Like everything. When you return to the ludus, there's a pouch tucked under your belt. 10 silver coins and another rose drawn onto parchment. The guards say nothing. They've seen it all before. Titus is waiting near your cell. He raises an eyebrow, says nothing. You shrug. Better than dying, you mutter. He nods. You both understand how thin the line is between survival and surrender. The days that follow blur again. You fight. You win. You heal. You pose. Sometimes you're summoned for another evening of luxury and carefully staged affection. Sometimes it's just training and teeth-gritting endurance drills. But you're changing. Fame is a strange infection. You start catching your own name in conversations between guards. You start noticing fans in the arena. People who wear versions of your helmet, or who mimic your fighting stance. A kid once ran up to the fence near the ludus, stuck his fingers through the bars and shouted, "Corvus! Kill 'em all!" You didn't know what to say. Here's your scholarly debate for the day. Historians still argue whether gladiator fame was liberating or just another shackle. Some think it gave fighters a tiny sliver of power, a stage, a voice. Others argue it made them even more expendable, useful only as long as they entertained. Because once the crowd moved on, so did Rome, and the sand always needs fresh blood. At night, you stare at the ceiling thinking about how many people have done this before you, fought, bled, loved, died. Maybe one or two made it out. Maybe someone kept a token, a broken sword, a sandal, a name etched into the brick. Maybe. But there's something darker creeping in too. The realization that survival isn't the same as living. That every favour, every coin, every whisper of fame is just another way of feeding the crowd's endless appetite for your body. Whether you're holding a blade or lying in a senator's bed, you're still part of the show. And when the crowd grows tired, you better hope you're already dead. You know something's different the moment you walk into the training yard. The sky's still its usual cloudless smear, the guards are still yawning into their wine, and the doctor still looks like he's one command away from clubbing someone into next week. But there's a tension in the air, a charged stillness, and then you spot it. A small stone table set up near the weapons rack, covered in powders, bottles, bowls of herbs, and a strange glinting instrument that looks vaguely like a scoop attached to a knife. You've heard whispers. Everybody has. Potions, tonics, secret rituals, gladiators with eyes like fire, who fought harder than they had any right to, who moved like their bones were lightning, and who screamed like gods had set fire to their lungs. Some say it was training, some say it was magic, Today you find out firsthand. The medicus is here early, his robes unusually clean, hair tied back, a crooked smile tugging at the corner of his mouth like he knows a secret he's dying to tell. He's flanked by 2 slaves and holding trays lined with tiny clay jars. The doctor signals your group to form a line. No one explains what's happening. "You're being prepared," the medicus says, licking his finger and pressing it into a mound of yellow powder. "Your next match is a big one. Festival day. Large crowd, important sponsor. We want you at your best." And apparently your best means turning you into a walking pharmacy. The first jar contains a thick green paste that smells like garlic and copper. "For inflammation," the medicus says, rubbing it into your thighs and shoulders with a casual slap. Then he smears another salve under your eyes, something that burns immediately and clears your sinuses like you just snorted a thunderstorm. Then comes the pill. Well, more of a nugget. Brown. Bitter, roughly the size of a marble. He calls it Gladiator's root. Swallow it. Don't chew unless you want to vomit out your intestines in front of the crowd. Encouraging, you swallow it. It's like gulping down a pebble dipped in old blood. No taste, just regret. Finally, he pricks your arm with a small bronze needle, collecting a drop of your blood. He examines it in the light like he's reading tea leaves, then nods once and waves you on. You stumble back to your place in line, already feeling the heat rise under your skin. Your breath shortens, your hands twitch. The yard seems brighter, louder. You feel like the inside of your skull is humming, and that's when training begins. The usual drills feel different today, sharper. Your sword moves faster, your feet glide across the sand and wool. You land blows more easily, and when you take hits, you barely register them. The pain's there, sure, but far away, like someone's poking a wax doll of you instead of your real flesh. You're floating, but deadly. The doctor doesn't say anything, just watches. He knows. You're not alone. Everyone's dosed. The murmillo you've sparred with before is breathing like a bull, nostrils flaring, eyes wide and glassy. A retiarius nearby is swinging his net like he's trying to catch ghosts. One guy slices clean through a wooden post by accident, looks down at the splinters and just laughs. It's exhilarating, terrifying and effective. But here's the twist. This isn't new. Ancient Roman sources mention all kinds of performance-enhancing substances, herbs, minerals, even animal byproducts, that were used to boost endurance, dull pain, or increase aggression. Some gladiators reportedly drank mixtures of vinegar, ashes, and fermented barley to build muscle and fight longer. Others were given opium-based salves or raw caffeine analogues from certain plants. Nobody called it doping, it was survival. And if your owner thought a handful of crushed beetle shells or scorpion venom might shave half a second off your reaction time, you got it. No questions asked. You're told not to train again that day. Just rest, let the mixture take root, the medicus says, like you're a garden and not a weapon. You lie back in your cell, heartbeat pounding like a war drum, skin hot, thoughts racing. You don't sleep. You just twitch in the straw, staring at the ceiling as patterns form in the shadows. Titus finds you like that and throws a wet cloth at your face. You'll burn out if you don't cool down, he says. He's seen it before. He lowers his voice. We had a guy last year, big German, took 2 doses, fought like a demon, didn't feel the 6 stab wounds until the match was over. Died smiling, didn't even know it. Timbo. You press the cloth to your face and breathe slowly. You can still taste the pill in your throat. Is that going to happen to me? He shrugs. Only if you believe your own legend. That night, the medicus comes back for one more round. This time it's a red liquid in a carved glass vial. He swirls it, watching your reaction. This one's optional, he says. Not for your body, for your mind. You raise an eyebrow. He leans in. Makes the fear go quiet. You take it. And yes, it works. The fear doesn't vanish, it just dims. Like someone pulled the curtain over the screaming part of your brain. You still know what's coming, but now it feels distant, manageable, less like a monster, more like a room you can choose not to walk into. There's a debate, of course. Always is. Some scholars believe these substances were symbolic, more ritual than pharmacological. Others argue the effects were very real, especially considering the physical demands of repeated combat, limited medical care, and high psychological stress. It's likely both. The Romans were nothing if not experts in blending science and superstition. And for you, it's real enough. Because when the next match is announced, against a Secutor known for breaking ribs and shields in equal measure, you don't flinch. You don't panic, you prepare. You spend the night stretching, drinking bitter tea from a cracked mug and running through strategies in your head. You know how he moves. You've seen him train. Big swings, slow recovery, go for the side. As dawn creeps in, you're sitting on your mat, polishing your sword. The blade hums with your pulse. Your fingers are steady. Your breath calm, you're not calm, but thanks to a cocktail of roots, prayers, bloodletting, and whatever it is they slipped into your wine last night, you feel calm. And sometimes that's all it takes. The arena is already humming before you even step through the gate. You can hear it from beneath the floor, the crowd shifting in their seats, the vendors shouting over one another, the deep animalistic buzz of thousands of voices feeding off anticipation. The walls shake with the weight of their hunger. But today, they're not just here for men with swords. Today, they've come for the venaciones, the beast hunts. And you've just been volunteered. No warning, no fanfare, just Gaius appearing at breakfast with a scroll in one hand and an expression that said, "I don't care how you feel about this." You're told the lineup was shuffled. One of the planned hunters was injured, or drunk, or both. Doesn't matter. You've been chosen as his replacement, congratulations. Nothing too exotic, Gaius had muttered, almost reassuringly. Just a bear, maybe two, possibly a leopard. You'll have help. Help? Right. That's what they call 3 other rookies in dented armour, who've only ever fought slow-mo millows in half-empty training yards. And now you're all being armed with long spears and instructed not to make sudden movements. Great advice when you're about to face an animal that can hear your heartbeat and wants to taste your kneecaps. You've heard the stories, of course, everyone has. Gladiators ripped apart by lions. One guy dragged by his face across the sand by a panther. There's even a rumour about a giraffe that kicked a man so hard his spine snapped. That last one might be made up. You hope? What's definitely not made up is what happens next. The gate opens. You step into the light, squinting against the glare. Sand shifting underfoot. The arena looks different during the Venaciones, less organised. More like a stage play gone wrong. There are props scattered around. Wooden boulders, fake trees, tall grasses made from painted reeds, all meant to simulate the wilderness, as if a few bundles of hay could convince anyone they're not in the middle of Rome. The crowd greets you with polite applause. They're not here for you, they're here for the animals, the novelty, the gore. If you survive, cool. If not, at least someone gets a good story to tell over dinner. Across the arena, a gate thuds open. A growl follows. Then it lumbers into view. A bear, enormous, black fur matted with heat, eyes glinting with something that looks uncomfortably like intelligence. It sniffs the air, paws the ground, and makes a sound that vibrates all the way into your chest. The other 3 gladiators tighten their grips on their spears. You fan out, like you were told. Make noise. Look big. Don't let it isolate anyone. The bear snarls and charges. What happens next is chaos. One man trips immediately. Gone. The bear barely slows down, swipes him aside like a sack of grain. Another panics and throws his spear too early. It glances off the bear's flank, does nothing but make it angrier. He runs, it chases. You don't run. You plant your feet, wait for your shot. The bear skids, turns, locks eyes with you. It charges. You time it perfectly, or maybe just get lucky. You sidestep at the last second, drive your spear deep into its shoulder. It screams, a horrible guttural sound. You duck, roll, come up behind it. The others regroup, try to flank. It spins, swipes. The spear rips from your hand, blood spatters the sand. But it's wounded now, slower, angrier. You grab a second spear thrown in from the sidelines. Shorter, not ideal, but it'll do. The final hit comes from the side. One of the others, some nameless Gaul you barely know, buries his blade in the bear's side as you jab it in the throat. It collapses, breath shuddering. Done. The crowd erupts. Not for you, for the bear, for the spectacle. But still, cheers are cheers. You're pulled off the sand, half stumbling, blood in your mouth from where you bit your cheek. Your arms shake. You don't know whose blood covers your tunic. Does not matter. Later, back in the medic's corner, while he plucks splinters from your forearm and mutters about infection, you ask him how many fights like that usually kill people. He raises an eyebrow. Too many, he says. You did better than most. You got lucky. But you don't feel lucky. You feel used. Again. Here's the hard truth they don't put in the romanticised books. Venetians were just another way to break people slowly. Fighters trained for animals got no special honour. No cool nicknames, just extra danger. Their fights weren't considered true gladiator matches, they were intermission. Warm-up acts, disposable. And yet they made money. They filled seats, they thrilled crowds, and that's why they kept doing them. The fringe fact. There were specialists who only fought animals. They were called bestiari, and while some volunteered, most were condemned criminals or slaves with no say in the matter. Rome called it justice. The crowd called it fun. You call it madness. After dark, you sit outside the cells with Titus, watching the moon rise over the walls. He hands you a scrap of meat he stole from the guard's ration tray. You don't ask how, you just eat. You know, he says, there's a rumour that Commodus used to fight animals in the arena. You snort. The Emperor? Yeah, had a thing for killing lions from a balcony with a bow. Of course he did. There's a pause. Do you ever feel like we're just ghosts, you ask? Titus looks at you. We're not ghosts, we're dreams, other people's. That's worse. You nod. The blood still hasn't washed out from under your nails. That night, you dream of the bear. Not its growl, not its claws, its eyes. Because in that final moment, when you plunged your spear in and watched it fall, you saw something too human. And for a terrifying second, you wondered if maybe you were the beast. Your scars are starting to tell stories louder than you ever could. There's one on your right thigh now, ragged and pink from the bear's claw, a badge the crowd won't ever see beneath your armour. But the other fighters nod when they spot it. Then there's the slash across your ribs from Marius Ferro, clean and deliberate, a souvenir from a fight you were paid to lose. You're not proud of that one, but you kept the coin. You keep everything now, scraps of cloth, broken bits of training weapons, a strip of leather from your first helmet. Not because you're sentimental, but because the body forgets eventually. The mind rewrites. The scars don't lie, and scars are currency. That becomes especially obvious the first time you're summoned not to fight, but to obey. You're halfway through morning drills when a herald arrives at the ludus, dressed like he walked out of a myth, all golden embroidery and smug superiority. He carries a wax tablet and announces, without irony, that you've been commissioned for heroic portraiture. The words leave a bad taste in your mouth. Turns out a local sculptor has been hired to create a statue series of rising gladiator stars. Art apparently is now part of your job description. You're brought to his workshop, more a dusty courtyard filled with broken arms and chipped noses than anything elegant. The sculptor himself is old, wiry, and absolutely obsessed. He circles you like a vulture, humming, squinting, muttering about musculature and tragic posture. You're told to hold a sword above your head and scowl, then twist your torso to imply tension, then drop to one knee and stare at the middle distance like you've just killed your own father. The posing takes hours, your muscles cramp, your stomach growls, but the old man is pleased. You're quite the specimen, he says. Not beautiful, no, but iconic. The crowd will love this. You're not sure whether to thank him or punch him in the throat. The statue, you later hear, will be placed outside the city gates along with two others. A warning, supposedly, or a welcome, depends on who you ask. But that's not the only attention you're getting. After the beast fight, people started whispering your name in new ways, not just with awe, with interest, and not just the rich women from Domus parties, though, yes, they still send for you sometimes, but the crowd itself. You've become the kind of name that shows up in betting house rumours and barroom brawls. One soldier apparently carved your name into his shield. Another claims he named his dog after you. Corvus, they say, is the one to watch, the raven who doesn't die. There's graffiti now, on the walls near the amphitheatre, Corvus Invictus. Someone sketched a bird with a sword in its beak. The wings are wrong and the sword is comically short, but still, you're etched in. Here's the strange, almost laughable part. You now have fans. Children who call your name from behind fences, street performers mimicking your fights for coins, women and men who try to slip you tokens after matches, rings, ribbons. One woman gave you a single peach, perfectly ripe. You ate it slowly in your cell that night like it was gold. There's a new rhythm to life in the ludus now, less fear, more repetition. You train, you heal, you perform. You're monitored constantly, weighed, inspected, adjusted like livestock. A cracked greave is replaced before you even notice it's loose. Your helmet is polished every other day. You're worth something now. They want to keep you alive, at least until you stop drawing attention. The doctor is different with you, too. Less screaming, more scrutiny. He watches you during sparring like a craftsman checking the balance on a blade. Once, after a particularly good bout, he nods and says, "You're starting to understand the game." "What game?" you ask, breathless. He taps the side of his head. "The one they don't see? That's the one that keeps you breathing." The scholars love to argue about what made a gladiator great. Was it skill? Survival rate? Showmanship? The truth, you've come to realise, is simpler. A great gladiator knows how to manipulate the crowd. You win just enough to seem invincible. You bleed just enough to seem mortal. And you make sure someone always sees it. Titus explains it like this. A scar on your chest says you fought. A scar on your back says you ran. But a scar on your face, that says you survived something bad and made it look good. You've got a new one now, right along your jawline, courtesy of a recent training accident. Or maybe it was an accident. Hard to say. You were sparring with a newly arrived gladiator, a Spaniard with something to prove, and he came in high and wild. Your block was half a second late. The blade kissed your jaw, not deep, but enough to paint your tunic red and silence the yard. The doctor had stepped in then, pulled the Spaniard away with a grip like iron. No punishment, just a look. The message was clear: you're valuable, and valuable things don't get broken unless someone's ready to pay the price. You check the scar in your reflection later, using a polished shield. It's not bad, adds character, adds mystery. The crowd will love it. Here's your quirky historical nugget. Some gladiators were actually marketed based on their scars. In rare cases, arena officials even issued tokens. Tiny stamped coins with a fighter's image that displayed specific injuries. People collected them like baseball cards. One surviving token shows a gladiator named Verus with a broken nose and a victory tally etched beneath it. Battle damage as branding. That night, while you're cleaning your gear under the flickering torchlight, one of the younger recruits asks if it's true you fought a bear. You say yes. Was it terrifying? You pause, think about it. Only until it wasn't. He blinks. What does that mean? It means, you say, drying your sword, fear doesn't disappear. It just gets quieter than your will to live. He nods like he understands. He doesn't. But he might one day. You lie down and stare at the ceiling again. Your body aches, but the pain feels like proof. Of something. You're still here. You're remembered. You're the man with the raven's name, the scars to prove it, and the crowd behind you, at least for now. But deep down you wonder, when the cheering stops, will you still know who you are without the blood? There's an old saying whispered among the gladiators, usually late at night when the guards are drunk and the cell torches burn low. Win the crowd, win your freedom. It's spoken half in hope, half in mockery, because most know it's a lie. One of those shining fables Rome dangles in front of your face, just far enough that you'll keep running toward it, like a dog chasing a chariot. But once in a while, it happens. Once in a while, a man earns his rudis. The wooden sword. It's not much to look at. A short training blade, often carved from cheap wood rough at the hilt. But in the hands of a gladiator, it's sacred. It means freedom, retirement, permission to walk away from the blood and the crowd and the shouting and the constant pressure to be someone's entertainment. You get it after many wins, or one unforgettable one. Sometimes after a match so brave, so noble, the editor or even the emperor himself decides you've earned the right to stop being owned. And now the rumours are swirling that a rudis is on the table. Not for you, yet, but for someone in your ludus. That's enough to make the air feel different. Suddenly everyone's sparring harder, posing longer in the arena, whispering theories about who might get it. Some name you. Most name Marius Ferro. He's had more wins, more scars, more stories. But he also has a bad knee and a drinking problem, and some say the crowd's getting tired of his wheeze. You start thinking about what freedom might actually look like. You haven't in a long time. Rome trains that out of you early. But now it presses at the back of your mind. Would you stay in the city? Leave for the countryside? Maybe you return home, if home even exists anymore. Or maybe you'd stay close, train others, become a doctor of bark orders instead of taking them. It's dangerous, this thinking. Dangerous careers because it feels real. Then the match is announced. A special event. Midweek, midday, in honour of some senator's birthday. One of those shows they throw together quickly, but with big names to make it shine. You're on the roster. So is Marius. So is the new crowd favourite fit, a gladiatrix named Callista. Yes, women in the arena. You've seen her fight once. She's lean, fast, with a wildness to her movements, like she's always just barely staying within the bounds of control. The crowd loves her. Not just because she's rare, but because she's good. You suspect she's being groomed for something bigger. Maybe even the Rudies. And that's what makes this next part complicated. They tell you just before the match that it will be a three-way exhibition. Not a free-for-all, a sequence. First, you against Marius. Then the winner against Callista. You don't like it. Not because you're scared of losing, but because this setup reeks of spectacle politics. They want drama. Hero versus legend. Legend versus woman. Woman versus raven. Doesn't matter how it ends, as long as it looks good. You find Marius in the prep room, strapping on his greaves, jaw tight. You want it, you ask softly. He looks up. His eyes are tired. I earned it 10 fights ago, he mutters. But if they want a bloody swan song, I'll give them one. He doesn't ask you to throw the match. You don't offer. But the silence between you says everything. When the fight begins, the crowd is buzzing louder than usual. They know something's coming. They can smell it. You and Marius meet in the centre of the sand, nod once, and go. He's slower than you remember. Strong, yes. Precise, definitely, but slower. His knee stiffens when he pivots, and you catch him early with a slash across the shoulder. He grimaces, adjusts, you press, he holds. The rhythm becomes something different than combat. Not staged, not fake, but respectful. Two men trying to make each other look good without getting killed. And then it happens. Marius's foot slips, barely. You strike not hard, but enough to drop him to one knee. He looks up at you, eyes clear, nods once. You raise your blade. Missio? Mercy granted. The crowd roars. Not for you, for him. They rise to their feet, clapping, cheering, some shouting for the Rudies already. You step back. The editor consults his aides. The moment stretches. Then a slave steps forward carrying it. The wooden sword. The arena goes silent. Marius rises, straightens his back, and takes it in both hands. He bows, deep, old-fashioned, and the cheers explode. He's free. You help him limp to the edge of the sand. He grips your arm tightly. Don't stop, he says, even when you want to. Then he's gone, swallowed by the crowd. But there's no time for sentiment. The next gate opens, Callista enters. She doesn't look at you, doesn't smile. She just rolls her shoulders, spins her blade once and lunges. It's like fighting a thunderstorm. She's fast, unrelenting, and she doesn't care that you just spared a legend. This is her moment, and she's taking it. You trade blows furiously, the crowd loves it. They're torn now, unsure who to cheer for. They're Raven, they're Amazon. Every clash of blades sends shouts rippling through the tears. You take a hit to the ribs. She takes one to the leg. Neither of you falters. Eventually she slips, only just. You could take her down, you don't. She sees it, rebounds, comes in harder. When the fight ends, neither of you falls. You simply stop, breathe, look to the editor. He holds up both hands, thumbs up, you both live. The crowd goes mad. Later, when you're back in the corridors below the arena, you find her leaning against a column, wiping sweat from her forehead with a scrap of cloth. She tosses it aside. You could have won, she says. You shake your head. So could you. She smirks. Then maybe next time we both do. There's a strange camaraderie in surviving together. Not friendship, not yet, but mutual recognition. Two gladiators who fought for something more than a tally mark on the wall. Here's your fringe fact of the day. Female gladiators, gladiatrices, did exist. Rare, yes. Often seen as novelties, often erased from official histories. But they were there. We know from surviving inscriptions, reliefs, even a grave marker for a woman named Achillea, who was said to have fought bravely in the arena like a man. You walk back to the ludus that night, not with your head high, but steady. Marius is free. Callista is rising. And you? You're still here. Still fighting. Still carving your name into the stone. Maybe the Rudies isn't for you, not yet. But it doesn't feel impossible anymore. It feels close. You don't remember when it started feeling normal. Waking up to the groan of iron gates, the stink of unwashed men, the grinding of bone against training weapon, it just is. There's no shock anymore when someone dies during morning drills, no stomach turn when the blood soaks into the sand where you eat. You've learned to hold two truths in your head at once, that life is precious and that yours could be taken for the sake of afternoon entertainment. And some days, like today, you even forget to care. It's an execution day. You can tell because the guards are hungover, the slaves are tense, and the Dr. A isn't in the yard. He doesn't need to be. Executions aren't his domain. He trains warriors. This is punishment theatre. Gaius Pollio appears mid-morning, sipping watered wine, waving lazily at a list. Your name isn't on it, thank the gods, but you're still chosen to watch. Observation duty, he calls it. Education. You'll see what happens when men try to run, he says with a smile so dry it cracks the air. They take you to the Colosseum early, before the crowd pours in. The air still holds the faint chill of the night. You stand with a few others, Titus, Callista, two rookies who look like they might throw up before noon. Above, workers are dragging props onto the arena floor. One of them is a mock ship, its hull painted with red swirls and flames. A theatrical backdrop. You already know what it's for. Naumachia, a fake naval battle. That's the theme today. But the condemned don't know that. They're just prisoners, not trained fighters, no stagecraft, no tactics, just terrified men, shackled and shaking, dressed in mismatched armour, and told the house they'll be spared if they make it entertaining. You've heard that promise before, it's a lie. The first wave is made to row the ship in front of the crowd while trumpeters blare and banners wave. The audience laughs, cheers, eats, drinks. A man in a tunic patterned with the birds tosses peanuts at the prisoners. A few catch them. One flinches and gets smacked by a guard. Then come the archers. They line the walls, not hidden, not subtle. And when the signal sounds, an exaggerated wave from the editor, they fire. Arrows rain down like a god changed his mind about mercy. One prisoner dives overboard. The crowd loves it. You stand there, fists clenched. You don't look away, you don't flinch, you just watch. After that it gets worse. They stage a battle, condemned prisoners dressed as barbarians, forced to fight each other in pairs while slaves painted blue drum from the sidelines. When someone drops to their knees, the drums stop. The crowd leans forward. The editor, ever theatrical, pauses, then lowers his thumb. Each time a different man finishes the job. Each time the crowd roars. It's spectacle, sure, but not honour. These aren't gladiator matches. There's no rhythm, no strategy, no respect between fighters. Just fear and desperation, bleeding out on the sand while people laugh and bet on how long the next one lasts. It makes you sick, but also sharp, because this is Rome's message, loud and clear. You're useful only as long as you entertain us. When you don't, you die like them. Historical fact time, because yes, even the horror show has precedent. Executions were a core part of Roman arena culture. They weren't hidden in back rooms. They were the opening acts. Called noxiae, the condemned were sometimes made to reenact myths, like being burned alive as Hercules, or sewn into animal skins and fed to wild dogs. One crowd favourite? Reenacting the story of Orpheus, but instead of charming animals, he got mauled by them. The line between justice and drama didn't exist. You wonder how many of the crowd even know why these men are being executed. Theft, rebellion, wrong god at the wrong festival. Does it even matter? All sins are equal under Rome's version of justice if they're interesting enough to bleed publicly. Back in the holding area, the silence is thick. Even Titus isn't making jokes. One of the rookies asks, would they ever do that to us? No one answers, because the truth is yes, if you defy your lanistae. If you try to escape. If you get too old or too slow and someone with money wants a fresh name to bet on. You know a man named Darius once. Good fighter. Quiet. Had a bad match, cracked 3 ribs, couldn't train. Gaius sent him to the beasts. No trial, no warning, just gone. Later that night you sit outside your cell with Callista. She's picking at her fingernails with a shard of bone. It's not about guilt, she says suddenly. It's about usefulness. You glance at her. Those men today, she continues, they weren't punished. They were used. Same as us. Just faster. You nod. You've stopped expecting justice here. That word doesn't mean anything in the arena. What matters is the crowd. Always the crowd. They forgive, they forget, they decide. There's graffiti near the east wall of the amphitheatre you saw once. Crudely carved, but honest. It read, "Live well, die loud." You didn't understand it at the time, now it is scripture. Because in the end, there are only 2 ways to go in this world. Die quietly and be swept away with the rest of the Noxii, or die memorably and maybe, just maybe, get carved into a wall somewhere. The next morning, the guards are still hungover. You eat your barley mash, tie your boots, line up for drills. As you step onto the sand, you notice a patch still stained from yesterday's show. The slaves haven't scrubbed it all out. The reddish smear, the cracked bones near the edge of the ring. You look down at it, then up, and start swinging, because you're still here, and you're not going out like that. The first time you hear the word conspiracy, it comes in a whisper behind a water cart. 2 guards, one drunk, the other too tired to care. You're leaning on a crate, wrapping your wrist with rough cloth when you catch it. 4 of them, from the Gaul's crew, said they're tired of dying for wine-sodden pigs. Could be stupid, could be real. You freeze, not from fear, from recognition. Because every man who survives long enough in the arena eventually asks himself the same question. What if we stopped playing? Not because rebellion is smart, it's not. It gets you tortured, crucified, or worse, fed to something with too many teeth. But the thought itself, that moment when your blood-soaked brain dares to whisper enough, that's the most dangerous thing in the world. And it's spreading. Later that day, Titus confirms it. You're sparring, breathing hard, blades clacking, when he leans in during a clinch and mutters, "There's talk." You don't have to ask what. He just nods. Not here, not yet, but others outside the city, smaller ludi ones with worse conditions. No meat, no matches, just beatings and waiting for death. And some of them, they're done waiting. You remember a story you heard early on about a Thracian gladiator named Spartacus. Maybe you've heard of him. He started something big once, real big. They say he broke out of his ludus with barely more than kitchen knives and discipline, then spent 2 years leading a war Rome didn't want to admit it was losing. He fought trained soldiers, burned estates, shook the Senate, then eventually he lost. Of course he did. Rome doesn't let ghosts haunt the empire for long, but the ripple never really stopped. His name still echoes in dirt-side drinking songs. His name shows up scratched into walls of cellars and back alleys. S for Spartacus, a symbol for when the cage rattles. Now, the cage is rattling again. And you? You're not sure where you stand. You talk to Callista that night, under cover of a storm rolling across the hills outside Rome. Rain drums against the roof, thunder low and lazy like a sleeping god. She's sitting with her back to the cell bars, chewing dried fig. You tell her what you heard. She listens. "Are they stupid?" she asks after a long silence. "No more than us." She raises an eyebrow. "I like breathing, even if it's in a cage." You nod. "Me too." But you both know you're lying, at least a little. The next week, tension coils tighter in the ludus. Fewer matches are scheduled. Guards double up on night patrol. Some of the veterans are transferred, or so Gaius says. No one sees them again. No one believes they got promoted. During training, one of the newer recruits snaps. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's the way the doctor won't stop screaming. Maybe it's just everything. He throws his wooden sword, screams that he's not a slave, and lunges at the nearest guard. He makes it 4 steps before he's on the ground, blood bubbling from his mouth. No one moves to help. No one can. The message is clear. Rome doesn't tolerate outbursts. Rome smiles at obedient killers and crushes anyone who tries to rise above the sand. That night, someone scratches a message into the wall near the baths. You see it while washing dried sweat and grime from your shoulders. A simple mark. 2 crossed blades under a crescent moon. A symbol, not a threat, a signal. Titus sees it too, doesn't say anything, but he leaves his hand on it a beat too long. You're both pretending not to see the revolution happening in the corner of your eyes. Here's your historical twist. There really were rebellions among gladiators, and not just Spartacus's. Smaller uprisings happened in Capua, Sicily, even inside Rome itself. Most were crushed quickly, but a few burned bright for a moment. Some involved slaves joining in, hoping for freedom. Others collapsed because someone snitched, usually for a sack of silver and a guarantee they'd live long enough to spend it. Gaius tightens the leash. Sparring is cut short. Meals are better, temporarily. It's a classic move. Keep them fed, give them wine, hope they forget they're prisoners. You get an extra fig at dinner. No one touches it. You think about what it would look like. A real revolt. Fighting through the barracks, overpowering the guards, breaking into the weapon stores, maybe even storming the streets. You could flee the city, vanish into the countryside. You've got fans. Some of them might help. hide you, feed you, or maybe they'd turn you in for the reward money and brag about it for the next 10 years. Callista brings up a sharper truth. We're not Spartacus, she says. We're performers. We've been trained to kill one at a time, not storm a city. We don't know war, we know theatre. But maybe theatre's enough, you say. She laughs, bitter and low. If we die in a rebellion, they'll just call it a story and make us the villains. Maybe even reenact it in the arena. New blood playing dead versions of us. That's Rome. It eats the truth. You don't answer, because she's right. But still, the marks keep appearing. Etched in wood, carved in stone, drawn with soot on the backs of sleeping pallets. The moon and blades, always hidden, always watching. And one night you wake to footsteps in the dark and a voice whispering at the bars. You're Corvus, right? You sit up. The figure's face is shadowed. When the moon's high in 3 nights and he says, go to the broken column near the south wall. Don't bring a blade, just bring your choice. Then he's gone. No name, no clue, just that word, choice. It echoes in your chest like a warning or a promise. Because up until now, your choices have been illusions. Fight or die. Obey or bleed. Smile or starve. But now something real is being offered. Something with risk. And maybe something with meaning. You lie awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. Because in 3 nights you'll walk into the shadows near the wall and decide if you're a slave with fame or a free man with blood on his hands. 3 nights pass slower than any you've ever lived. The kind of slow that creeps into your bones, where time feels thick and sticky, like honey poured through cracks in stone. You train like normal, eat like normal, sleep like a man waiting for a storm. No one says a word about the meeting, not Titus, not Callista, not even the new Gaul who keeps glancing at the southern wall like it might sprout wings and fly away. Everyone's pretending not to know what's coming, because pretending keeps you alive. The moon rises full and white, a glowing scar stretched across the sky. You count the hours, wait until the guards rotate, until the yard empties, until the sounds of the city fade into the low hum of distant revelry. Then, silent as a prayer, you move. The broken column is exactly where it's always been, half crushed near the edge of the practice yard, sprouting weeds from its cracks, forgotten by everyone except those who now treat it like a shrine. You arrive first, heart hammering, ears straining for movement. A few minutes later, Titus slips out of the shadows. Then the Gaul. Then 2 others you've only nodded to in passing. 5 in total. None of you speak right away. Finally, one of the others, young, sharp-eyed, more bone than meat, whispers, "Is bigger than us. Capua, Naples, Ostia. They've all heard. Some ludi already moving. They're coordinating." "Coordinating?" Titus scoffs too loudly. You all flinch. He lowers his voice. "You think ye 5 angry slaves with wooden swords are going to take on Rome?" The sharp-eyed one doesn't flinch. It's not about taking Rome. It's about making them bleed before they forget we were ever here. That sticks with you, because you know it's true. The alternative is slow death. Spectacle. A dozen more matches until your name fades, until the crowd trades you in for a younger hero with smoother scars and a better kill ratio. The plan is simple. Too simple, which means it's probably desperate. On the day of the Saturnalia Games, biggest of the season, they'll ignite the revolt. One ludus storms its guards, takes the nearby amphitheatre, holds it until the city responds. If others join in time, they link up, scatter to the countryside, vanish into the cracks of the empire. If not, then they die loud. Glorious, with blood and fire. Maybe with songs written in their names. That's the dream, or the lie. They ask if you're in, and you don't answer. Not because you're afraid, not exactly, but because you've been playing this game long enough to know the odds. You've watched men die from bad footing and unlucky parries, from thirst, from infection, from the wrong editor in the wrong mood. You've survived because you've learned how to read the wind, when to fight and when to bend, and right now the wind's too quiet. So you say maybe. Not yes, not no, just enough to keep the door open. They nod, they understand, that's the game too. You return to your cell before dawn, heart still pounding. You lie in the dark, staring at the ceiling, imagining the arena filled not with fans, but fire. Not with names, but screams. And then the next morning everything is exactly the same. because Rome always pretends nothing's happening right up until it starts burning. The Saturnalia games approach like a tidal wave. 3 days of feasting, shouting, chaos. The streets fill with masks and dancers, wine flowing like water. Slaves are allowed to insult their masters, nobles wear beggars' clothes, and the whole city pretends the world is upside down, for fun. In the arena, however, nothing flips, the blood still flows downward. You're scheduled for a team match, 4 against 4. No one you know on your side, but the opponents are familiar. 2 from a rival ludus, one of the new Myrmillos, and, of all people, Callista. It's rare, mixing men and women in combat. Not because Rome's squeamish. They just like their violence neat. Categories, labels. But today's about novelty, and nothing gets the crowd louder than blurring the rules. Your team is briefed. It's not a fight to the death, but make it look like one. Big swings, dramatic injuries. Let the crowd gasp. They love the gasps. You're armoured light, to move faster. Your blade's been sharpened more than usual. You test its weight, its balance, your fingers twitching with memory. Across the prep room, Callista laces up her braces, saying nothing. You nod to her. She doesn't nod back. Maybe it's part of the show. Maybe she's just tired. Then the gates open. The roar hits you like heat. It always does. The crush of sound, the blinding light, the sudden feeling that you're walking into a dream made of knives. Your team forms a loose line. The other side does the same. You're not given time to posture. The trumpet blares and it begins. Immediately chaos. You engage the Myrmillo, big, loud, brutal. He hammers your shield like he's trying to break a door, but you roll under his strike, clip his leg, twist away. The crowd shouts. He stumbles, recovers, comes again. To your left, one of your team goes down screaming. Blood sprays across the sand. Real or fake, you're not sure. Doesn't matter. The crowd howls either way. You're driven backward toward Callista. She's locked with one of the others, blades singing against each other. You step into her blind spot, knock away a strike meant for her shoulder. She doesn't thank you. "Watch your side," she growls, then ducks a swing and takes her opponent down with a vicious hook behind the knee. You smile despite yourself. You don't trust her, but you trust the way she moves. By the end, it's just you and her. 2 left standing. The crowd wants a finish. You circle, trade a few slow, telegraphed blows. They chant your names. Together, the noise climbs. She speaks first. You still thinking about it? The revolt, you mutter, parrying, and she nods. Yeah. She swings again. You block. The crowd gasps. Somewhere above, a noble tosses coins onto the sand. "I'm in," she says quietly. Then she drops to one knee, raises her hand. "Missio." You hesitate just for show, then lower your blade. Mercy granted. The crowd's on its feet. You raise your sword. She rises beside you. No blood, no kill, just story hour, and they eat it up. Later, back in the cells, she finds you. "You better make a choice soon," she says. "If it starts and you hesitate, they'll kill you anyway." She's not wrong. Here's your quirky fact. Some gladiators were believed to form secret brotherhoods, sworn alliances that extended beyond the ludus. Not just for rebellion, but for protection, for vengeance, for legacy. Rome feared these brotherhoods almost as much as it feared legions gone rogue, and yet it kept creating the very conditions that made them inevitable. You lie awake that night, fingers curled around the hilt of your sword. The revolt might fail. It might start before you're ready. But if it comes, you're not sure if you'll fight for freedom, or just to make them remember your name. You never see it coming. That's the worst part. There's no whisper in the air, no change in the wind, no ominous cloud rolling over the city. Just a normal morning. Barley mash for breakfast, sweat on the training sand, the low buzz of flies near the water trough. Titus cracks a joke about the new recruit whose shield is bigger than his courage, and Callista rolls her eyes so hard you think they might pop out of her skull. Everything's ordinary. Until it's not. It begins with the bells. Not the arena bells, city bells, temple bells, urgent, frantic ringing, like the gods themselves are being mugged in the forum. Everyone freezes. Even the doctore who never freezes. He steps into the centre of the yard, squinting toward the hills like he's waiting for the sky to split open. And then comes the smoke. Thin at first. A curl. Then more. Dark, oily columns rising in the distance somewhere near the market quarter. And under it, distant shouting, screams, metal clanging. Not performance, real. You meet Titus's eyes. He mouths the word before you can. Now? and then all hell cracks open. A whistle from one of the towers. Guards start moving fast. Too fast. They're panicking, which means they don't know what's happening either. One trips trying to strap on his breastplate. Another shouts for reinforcements that don't come. You see it in their faces, the same fear you've worn in the arena. Now it's theirs. And that's when you hear the first gate fall. Not yours, somewhere else, but close. A thunderclap of wood splintering. Then another. Somewhere in Rome, someone's doing what you were too cautious to try. Callista is already moving. She grabs you by the arm. They've started, she hisses. It's now or never. You hesitate, only for a breath, but it's enough to feel the weight of everything. The blood behind you, the crowd above you, the thin, brutal line between story and reality. And then you move. The plan isn't elegant. You never expected it to be. But there's a current in the air now, and it's sweeping everyone off their feet. Some guards try to lock the barracks. You break through them before they finish bolting the door. A rookie grabs a practice blade, then drops it in panic. Another man takes a spear to the gut in the yard and falls silently, as if shocked that Rome actually let him die without applause. You're in the armory before you know how you got there. Real weapons now, heavy, balanced, sharp enough to speak in one stroke. You choose a gladius that fits your hand like it was born there. Callista takes a curved blade, lighter, faster. Titus grabs two short axes and immediately looks like a nightmare. Outside, the gates are open, or maybe just smashed. You sprint through alleyways with a dozen others, slipping through alleys you barely recognise, past shopkeepers ducking behind carts, past graffiti that suddenly seems less like art and more like prophecy. Corvus Vivit. You see it scratched on a wall, old and cracked. You're still alive. So far, the city is chaos. You hear battles breaking out in the forum. Somewhere someone sets a chariot on fire just for fun or vengeance. A market stall explodes in sparks and fruit. Two slaves ride past on stolen horses, laughing, covered in gold necklaces that clearly don't belong to them. For a moment, it almost feels like a festival gone completely off script. But then you turn a corner and see the execution squads. Rome moves fast when it feels cornered. The praetorians are already in the streets, armoured to the teeth, marching in units, cutting down anyone who even looks like they've lost their chains. You duck into a bakery, heart hammering, drag two others with you. One's bleeding, the other's trembling. You don't ask their names, you don't have time. Here's your harsh historical reality. The Spartacus rebellion wasn't crushed in the arena. It was crushed in the fields, in the mountains, in the streets. Rome's strength wasn't just discipline, it was ruthlessness. Entire towns that gave refuge to rebels were razed. Thousands of captured fighters were crucified along the Appian Way. The message was simple. You will not win, but we will make sure you die slowly trying. You push deeper into the city toward the amphitheatre. Not to hide, to fight. The plan, if you can call it that, is to take the arena. To turn Rome's favourite theatre into a fortress. A message, a final act written in iron and fire. Other groups are converging too. You see fighters from rival Luda, men you've only ever faced across sand, now shoulder to shoulder with you. You even nod at one, a big Thracian who once broke your collarbone. He nods back. No time for grudges now. You breach the amphitheatre through a side gate. It's barely guarded. The city's too focused elsewhere. You climb into the seating tiers and stare down at the sand you've bled on 100 times. Now empty. Pristine. Time to ruin that. You take position with the others, watching the gates, waiting. Their plan is to hold it, as long as possible, to make a stand they'll never forget. And then you hear it. The crowd, not a cheering one this time, a mob, pushing into the lower levels, armed, furious. Some are freed slaves, some are citizens, swept up in the chaos, some are looters who just want to set something on fire and laugh. And in the middle of it all, leading them, Marius Pharaoh. He shouldn't be here. He was free. But here he is, gladius drawn, a wild grin splitting his face. You run to meet him, crash into a hug that nearly knocks the air from your chest. I told you, he says, eyes gleaming. Don't stop, even when you want to. You nod, too stunned to speak. He lifts his blade. Let's make them remember this day. You take your place beside him, Callista to your left. Titus on the high tier, shouting orders like he's suddenly born for command. Below, the city burns. Behind you, the crowd grows. You draw your sword. This isn't theatre anymore. This is the story Rome never wanted told. The sky turns red before the killing even begins. Smoke curls above the city like the fingers of some vengeful titan clawing toward the heavens. Somewhere in the forum, a temple bell tolls, slow, low, and grim, as if the gods themselves have finally noticed what's happening. You're standing in the middle of the arena that made you, gripping your sword so tight your knuckles ache, surrounded by fighters who never should have stood side by side. Men and women from rival schools, rebels, freedmen, and even a few mad citizens who threw in with the chaos just to feel something real. And across the sand, behind the gates where the beast used to be kept, you hear the next horror being led in. At first, it sounds like chains dragging, heavy ones. Then the deep growl, guttural and low, vibrating through the stone beneath your feet. The crowd, the real crowd, not the rebels up in the tiered seats, shifts, not the usual screams, murmurs, unease. You glance at Callista. She's pale but steady. "That's not a man," she says quietly. She's right. The gate groans open, and they let it out. It's a lion. No, not just a lion. The lion. The one the games always whisper about. The one they save for executions, the kinds that need to make a statement. Huge, muscled, mane-like fire, eyes yellow with fury. They starved it for this, you can tell. Behind it, more. 2 tigers, a bear already bleeding from some earlier match. An elephant, scarred, wild-eyed, its flanks twitching. This is Rome's final answer. A circus of death crashing into your rebellion with claws and tusks and the full snarling weight of the Empire's appetite for blood. Someone, somewhere in a marble hall, ordered this. Release the beasts. You would laugh if you weren't so sure you were about to die. Here's a little-known, fringe fact for you. Animals weren't always used just for spectacle. Sometimes they were weapons of intimidation. Rome trained and tormented them to attack specific armour types, scents, even movements. There were stories half-believed about lions that could recognise rebel insignia. It was psychological warfare wrapped in fur. And today, it's marching straight at you. The beasts hesitate, blinking into the light. Then the handlers crack their whips. Everything goes to hell. The lion charges first, straight toward a line of fighters defending the eastern stairs. You don't see who it hits first, just the blood that sprays like paint across the stone. Screams follow, human and animal. The tigers break left and right. One leaps onto a retiarius mid-sprint, claws sinking deep. He tries to stab upward, but vanishes under orange-striped fury. The bear, it limps, roars, swings over once, and collapses. Not dead, just done. The elephant turns in slow, stumbling confusion. You pray it stays confused. Then the lion turns toward you. You brace, raise your shield, try to slow your breathing. You never fought an animal this big in the arena, just the bear once. This is different. The lion is smart, angry, purposeful. It eyes you, huffs, and closes the distance with terrifying speed. You sidestep at the last second, drag your blade across its side. It roars. You spin, duck under its paw, drive your sword deep near its haunch. It stumbles, turns to so sharply, and Callista's there, slashing across its flank. The beast finally drops after 4 men and 2 blades find its heart. You're soaked in blood. Not just its, yours, others. You've lost track, no time to breathe. One of the tigers leaps into the stands. Chaos erupts as civilians scatter, and someone flings a torch. A tapestry catches fire, then a curtain, then a bench. The flames start climbing the wooden scaffolding like they've been waiting. Titus is shouting for regroup, trying to hold the southern stairs. You race to him, hacking down a panicked guard on the way. He nods when he sees you, then points to the gates. More coming. Not animals this time. Men. Praetorians, Rome's finest. They pour into the arena in formation, shields raised, faces blank, no emotion, just soldiers doing their duty. You wonder how many of them watched your matches before this, bet on you. Cheered when you survived. Now they want you dead. The fight is brutal. Up close, you lose people fast. The Gaul goes down with a javelin through the throat. Another man is set ablaze by a flaming arrow. Marius shouts, drops 2 soldiers in a fury, then disappears in the melee. Callista stays at your side. Her blade dances, faster than yours, sharper. She screams when she moves, wordless, feral. A gladiatrix in war paint made of ash and blood. The soldiers try to surround her. You break their line with a wild charge, splitting one down the middle. The crowd, your rebels, roar back. But you're losing ground.
Run fast!
Rome's trained killers don't care how many fans you have, they don't care how many scars you've earned or how loud the crowd once screamed your name. They just march, stab and keep marching. Someone calls for retreat. You backpedal toward the inner gates. The elephant, wounded and maddened by the noise, crashes into a support beam. Part of the upper structure buckles. Stone rains down. A man beside you vanishes under rubble. This is no longer a revolt. It's a slaughter. You reach the gate. Fewer than 20 of you left. And behind you the arena you bled in, fought in, lived in, now burning, cracking, coughing smoke like it's exhaling its last breath. You hesitate. Just once. Because despite everything, despite the blood, the lies, the pain, this place was your world, your proving ground, your stage. And even though you always hated it, a small ruined part of you still loves it, like a child clinging to the monster under the bed. Callista grabs your arm. "We go now," she says, "or we die here." You nod, and you run. You escape into the tunnels beneath the arena, the same ones you used to pace before matches, where you once listened for your name. Now they echo only with fire and footsteps and screams. Here's your scholarly debate for the night. Historians argue whether any such revolt ever reached the scale of what Spartacus did, let alone succeeded in seizing a Roman amphitheatre. Some say it's fiction, exaggerated by poets and dramatists. Others argue we've only lost the records, burned, buried, silenced by a Rome too ashamed to admit how close it came to losing control of its favourite game. But right now, whether or not history remembers you doesn't matter, because you're alive. Running through smoke, lungs burning, blood trailing behind you like a ribbon, and you're not alone. Not yet. The tunnels stretch on like veins beneath a dying beast, winding, stinking, pulsing with the distant sound of war above. You run through them half-blind, Callista at your side, Titus limping just behind. The walls sweat. The floor is slick with oil and blood and other things you don't want to identify. You've been down here before, of course, back when these halls were merely the backstage of Rome's favourite blood opera. Back when the worst thing that could happen was being called out early or facing a beast you didn't expect. Now the tunnels are your only lifeline, and you're not sure if they lead out or deeper in. You pass a corpse, then another, guards by the look of them. One with his throat open wide like a mouth mid-scream. The other burned, still smoking. Someone already came this way. You're following ghosts. Titus stumbles, curses, but keeps moving. He's pale. You see the gash above his hip seeping dark, thicker, now. Too much blood lost. Callista grabs him under the arm, hoists him without a word. Her face is pure focus, no fear, no rage, just survival. You realise in that moment how much she's changed. You all have. You're not fighters anymore. You're soldiers, scrappy, disorganised, maybe doomed. But you've crossed some invisible line. You're no longer playing war for applause, and you are living it. The tunnel splits. You halt. The left leads downward, toward the animal pits. You remember the smell, the heat, the screams of caged things. The right, unfamiliar. Probably storage or escape, or a trap. You take the right. The tunnel narrows, then curves. Then abruptly opens into a chamber you didn't know existed. It's massive, a hidden cavern of sorts, low ceiling, torch-lit. And in it are at least 20 others. Fighters, slaves, even a few Roman citizens, dressed down, armed with kitchen blades and stolen short swords. They turn as you enter, weapons half raised, until they recognise you. Corvus, someone says. Your name sounds strange in this space, real, weighty. They part to let you through. In the centre, Marius stands over a map scrawled in charcoal on the floor. The amphitheatre, the adjacent streets, the river, escape routes. He looks up, eyes bloodshot but alert. Thought you were dead. You shrug. Not yet. Then we still have a shot. Do you? Because from what you've seen, Rome has no interest in negotiations, no mercy, no illusions. Just fire and swords and orders barked from the marble lips of senators who sip wine, while men like you die beneath them. Callista sits. Titus sinks beside her, clutching his side. Someone offers cloth. She accepts it without thanks. You kneel beside the map. What's the plan, you ask? Marius draws a line from the Colosseum to the river. This tunnel connects to an old aqueduct path. If we can reach it, we can disappear into the districts outside the wall. Villas, farms, the Empire's soft belly. And then he looks at you, not with hope, with truth. Then we run, we scatter, we become stories. A beat passes. It's not victory, but it's not nothing. You nod. The next few hours pass in fragments. Bandaging wounds, dividing weapons, sketching rotations. The whisper of water echoes through the halls, a soft rhythm beneath the tension. At one point a woman, you think her name is Licinia, asks you if you think any of this matters. Will anyone remember what happened here? You tell her yes, you lie. Because here's your historical fun fact one fact. For all the thousands of gladiators who lived and died in the arena, we only know the names of a few dozen: Verus, Priscus, Flamma. And even those are half remembered, wrapped in myth, twisted by time. The rest, forgotten, eaten by the very crowd that once screamed their names. Rome doesn't archive its shame, it buries it. But you don't tell Licinia that. Eventually Marius gives the signal. Time to move. You light torches, douse others. The group strings out in 2 lines, quiet, steady, like animals leaving a burning forest. You help Titus up. He's worse now, slurring, legs trembling. You support half his weight. We almost made it out together, he murmurs. You don't respond. You just squeeze his arm. The aqueduct tunnel is cramped, wet. You walk ankle deep in old water. The walls slick with moss and mildew. Every step echoes. You pray no one hears. Then comes the sound you feared. A clatter behind, a grunt, a scream. You whirl. Too late. They're in the tunnel. Soldiers, at least a dozen, crammed into the narrow corridor, blades up, torches blazing. The first arrow takes a man behind you in the chest. The second glances off your shoulder. You grab Titus, shove him forward. Move, you roar. Marius turns, draws steel. Hold the line. But there is no line here. Just panic. Screams, water splashing. You lose Callista in the crush. You're dragging Titus now, he's barely conscious. His feet trail behind. A sword glances off the wall beside you. Another man goes down. You push forward, elbowing, clawing, biting your way through the bodies. Then just as the tunnel curves, just as light flickers ahead, Titus falls, not stumbles, falls. You catch him, but he's dead weight. A look confirms it. His eyes are glassy, jaw slack, a blade between his ribs. You don't know when it happened. You freeze, and for a second you want to stay, to drop, to die here beside your friend in the dark. But someone grabs you, Callista. She hauls you up. No words, just move. You do. The tunnel bursts open into the night, fresh air, moonlight, the river, a crumbling old aqueduct passage leading east, trees beyond, the countryside, freedom. You gasp it like air after drowning. Behind you, Marius and a few others emerge, soaked in blood. Of the 20 you met in the chamber, only 9 remain. You run, into the dark, into whatever waits. Later, after miles, you collapse beneath a grove of olive trees. You stare at the stars, still tasting blood. Titus is gone. The amphitheatre's in flames. The city hunts you. And yet, you breathe. You're free, and somewhere, somehow, you know Rome will never forget what you did. Even if it never says your name. The first days outside the city feel less like escape and more like exile. You keep expecting to wake up back in your cell, back in the damp stone gloom of the ludus, the rattle of chains and the bark of the doctor dragging you out of sleep. But you don't. You wake up under trees now, under sky, under stars. You wake up with the weight of absence pressing into your chest where Titus used to be. He's not here, and neither is the roar of the crowd, and neither is the arena that swallowed your name whole and spat out something that looked like freedom but tasted like blood. You're deep in the countryside now, miles from Rome. A day's walk past the last villa, the last paved road, the last marble monument. Power. Just dirt and scrubland, and the ever-present ache in your legs. Marius leads what's left of you, a ragged group of survivors that could barely qualify as a militia, let alone a rebellion. 9 of you, that's all, some armoured, most not, all scarred. Callista's shoulder is wrapped in linen soaked through from a wound she won't let anyone clean. Licinia walks like a ghost, silent and staring at the sky, her sword tied to her belt like she's forgotten what it's for. You find an abandoned farmstead in the hills, burnt out, overgrown, the kind of place where Rome's war machine once passed through and left nothing but ashes and collapsed beams. Marius says it'll do for a night, maybe longer. You dig out a corner of dry earth, make a fire with broken shutters. One of the others, Jonas, a Thracian who's never said more than 3 words at once, pulls a hair from a snare he must have set earlier. It's the first meat you've eaten in days. Tastes like victory, or maybe just not dying. Callista sits beside you. She hasn't spoken since the tunnel. You finally ask, "Did you see him go?" She nods once. He never saw it coming. You stare at the fire. Flames dance like fighters in the arena. Bright, chaotic, beautiful, gone too fast. "I think he knew," you say quietly. "Back at the column, before the revolt." "He always knew," she replies. "That's why he joked so much. He was trying to spend the time well." You don't reply. The silence is thick and full of ghosts. Here's your historical thread to pull on. Records of gladiator escapes are rare, but they did happen. Some fighters bought their freedom, others were released with honours, but a few simply vanished, disappeared. No grave, no mention, just gone. Scholars argue over what that means. Some think they died in obscurity, others say they went on to join uprisings, bandit gangs, or mercenary groups in the provinces. The truth is probably all of those. Rome created killers, and then acted surprised when they refused to stay in their pens. You and your group, you're now part of that uncertainty. The next few days pass in a blur of movement and hiding. You stay off the roads, travel at night, drink from streams, eat what you can trap or steal. Once, you pass a Roman patrol on a high ridge. You watch them from the shadows, barely breathing, muscles coiled like snakes. They're relaxed, arrogant. They're not expecting survivors. Or maybe they don't care. Maybe they think the story's already over. One morning, Marius gathers you all under a twisted olive tree and lays it out. "We can't stay together," he says. "They'll find us eventually. If not Rome, then bounty hunters. Informants, locals looking for a reward." Someone scoffs. "So what, we run forever?" Marius shakes his head. "We scatter. We seed the story. One flame is easy to stomp out, 10 sparks on harder." You get it. It's not about surviving anymore. It's about infecting Rome with memory. Turning your rebellion into a whisper that becomes a chant that becomes fear. The group splits that afternoon. Callista heads east, toward the coast. She says she knows a smuggler who owes her a favour. You're not sure if she's lying or just hopeful, but she leaves with a promise to return. Someday, when Rome least expects her. Licinia goes north. The Thracian, Jonas, goes with her. They plan to blend into a border town, pretend to be merchants, maybe even farmers. You've seen them fight. They'll pass as anything if they keep their swords low. Marius comes to you last. "What about you?" he asks. You shrug. "I don't know." "You ever think about just walking back in?" You blink at him. "To Rome?" "Yeah. Back into the city. Like a shadow. Kill a or a senator. Light a temple on fire. Start a new kind of fight." You stare at the horizon. And then what? He smiles, that same lopsided grin from the arena. Then you become legend, and they can't ever put you back in a cage. You think about it. It would be easy, wouldn't it? To end it with something big, something poetic. But that's not your story anymore. "I think I'll walk south," you say. "Find the mountains, see what kind of man I am without an audience." Marius nods. "Maybe that's the bravest choice." You clasp arms, a silent farewell. No tears, no promises, just understanding. You walk for days, through fields, through forests, through villages too poor to care who you are or what you've done. The world feels different now, raw, slower. Every sound sharper, every moment unchained. You find an old shepherd one night tending a broken fence. He asks if you can help. You do. He feeds you a heel of bread and a soft-boiled egg. Never asks your name, doesn't need to. You stay the night in his shed, under straw, listening to the silence. For the first time in months, you don't dream of blood. The next morning you wash in a stream, strip off what's left of your arena garb, bury it beneath a cairn of stones. Your name, Corvus, stays under the rocks too. Maybe someone else will find it and tell a story, but not you. You're walking now, not running, not hiding, just walking. and the world doesn't know who you are. But somewhere, in some Roman villa, a noble will wake up screaming because they saw you in their dreams, blade in hand, face in shadow. Because the arena never forgets its ghosts, and neither does Rome. You walk until your feet blister, and your thoughts stop echoing. Through hills so green they almost seem fake, past shepherds who pretend not to see your limp, or the scar that cuts your jawline like lightning across a map. The sky changes colours overhead, sunrise gold to dusk violet, and time begins to lose meaning. You don't count days anymore, just paths, just trees, just nights, where your breath fogs in the air and mornings where birdsong feels like a miracle. Eventually the land flattens, and the mountains you aimed for become less a destination and more a vague promise on the horizon. But by then, you don't care where you end up. You're just trying to find the edge of your own story. You sleep in barns, in groves. Once, in the ruins of a burned-out villa that still smells like charred figs. You trade labour for food, chop wood for goat cheese, repair a roof in exchange for a soft mat of straw and warm broth. People here don't ask who you are. They see the sword at your side and the way you scan the horizon every few minutes, and they know enough. You're not the first fugitive to wander through these parts, and you won't be the last. Still, there's a kind of peace in the anonymity. You start to feel your body again, not as a weapon, not as a symbol, but as a thing that can heal. Your hands stop trembling when you wake up. Your shoulder unknots, your breathing deepens, but the memories, they don't fade. They sharpen, not like knives, but like ink on a scroll that refuses to be erased. You remember Titus's laugh, always too loud, Marius's lopsided grin, Callista's blade flashing under torchlight, the lion's roar, the silence after your final match, the blood, the way the sand clung to your knees after every fall, the way your name once tasted sweet in the mouths of thousands and now clings to you like a ghost. You start carving again, small things at first, a stick turned into a bird, a pebble with lines etched to look like the arena floor. You do it without thinking until you find yourself carving a face, a mask, blank at first. Then you add a scratch across the jaw, a crow etched into the forehead. You stare at it for a long time, unsure if it's a goodbye or a reminder. That night you find a fire already burning in a clearing. An old man sits beside it, roasting something that smells like root vegetables and oil. He nods when you approach. No questions, just a gesture toward the flame. You sit, eat. He pours you watered wine from a chipped jug. Then, after the silence stretches long enough to feel sacred, he says, "You were one of them." It's not a question. You look up. "The scars," he continues. "The way you hold yourself, you fought in the games." You nod. He leans back. "I saw you. Once, years ago maybe. You fought a Thracian with a broken nose and a strange stance. Marius something. You danced around him. He still won. But you..." He laughs, soft. "You had the crowd." You chuckle, despite yourself. He always had the better left hand. The old man sips his wine. "You have a name?" You hesitate. Then, "I used to." He nods again, like that makes perfect sense. Before dawn, you leave a small wooden carving by the fire, your raven-faced mask, and disappear into the woods. From there, your story blurs. Some days you help farmers harvest olives, your muscles remembering how to move without hurting. Some nights you trade stories with travellers who'll never know they're speaking to a man who once killed for applause. Once a bandit tries to rob you. You don't draw your sword, you just look him in the eyes and say, "Do you know who I used to be?" He runs, you hear whispers along the roads, broken stories, mistruths. They say the Colosseum burned for 3 days and that a gladiator king led the rebellion before vanishing into the hills. They say his sword glowed red in the firelight, and that he spoke with the voice of Mars himself. They say his name was Corvus, the Raven, and that he cannot die. You laugh the first time you hear it, then again the second time. The third time you stop laughing. Because maybe a story is the only kind of freedom you ever really wanted. Not just escape from the walls, but escape from being used. Now they can't use you. They don't own your legend. You do. And the best part, you know what Rome hates most. Silence, uncertainty, the idea that one of its monsters survived. That somewhere out there, in the olive groves or the mountain paths or the forgotten roads between provinces, a man they once chained is still walking, still breathing, still choosing. That's power. Here's your final historical wink. Some say the figure of Corvus appears centuries later, in whispered rebellion songs and crude carvings in abandoned villas. A shadow warrior, protector of the oppressed, a ghost that watches from the trees. Maybe it's just myth. Maybe it's borrowed from someone like Spartacus. Or maybe it's you, your story reshaped by time, stretched by need, fed by fire. You settle eventually, in a place not marked on any map, a place where the wind carries more birdsong than screams. You build a small house from stone and timber, grow beans, raise goats, learn to laugh again. Sometimes a traveller finds you. Sometimes they ask for a story. And if the fire's low and the wine's warm, you tell one. About a man who fought every day with death. About a city that loved blood more than it loved heroes. About the arena. And about how sometimes the crowd doesn't get the last word. Sometimes the fighter walks away and lives. So now you lie back on your straw mat or your feather pillow or maybe just the bare floor wherever you happen to be tonight, and you let it all settle. The roar of the crowd fades to a whisper. The clink of chains, the crunch of sand underfoot, the thud of fists and the clang of steel, all of it sinks into the soft hum behind your thoughts. You survive the arena, maybe not with your name, maybe not with your friends, but you're still breathing, aren't you? Rome would hate that. And that's a little bit wonderful. Because you weren't supposed to. You weren't supposed to slip through the cracks, to crawl out from under the Empire's heel and disappear into the hills with your story burning like coals under your skin. You weren't supposed to have a future, or a garden, or a quiet morning where no one is screaming your name for blood. But you do. And somewhere out there, someone's still telling your story. Maybe wrong, probably wrong, but still, Corvus the Raven, the man who faced death every day and walked away. You shift under the blankets. The wind brushes against the shutters. Somewhere a dog barks in the distance, then stops. And you wonder, just for a moment, if tomorrow you'll wake up and all of this will have been a dream. But then you feel the scar across your ribs, the weight of a name buried under stones, the silence where applause used to live. And you know it was real. So go on, close your eyes and let the Empire fade. Because tonight you don't belong to Rome. You belong to yourself.